Chapter 1360. Where did you get this? The bandit leader suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest. Download the complete collection. My king. A bandit pointed at his chest in horror. He lowered his head and saw a trail of blood spreading out. His vision turned black, and he fell to the ground, dead. A dark cloud crossed the scorching sun, and the forest suddenly darkened. A few shrill screams quickly calmed down, mixed with a few murmurs. Win people over with virtue. Win people over with virtue. However, in this world, it was always easy to surrender to a fierce beast, but difficult to win people over. A tiger's roar resounded through the mountains. After a while, the treetops shook, and a fishy smell came. Just now, the fierce tiger jumped out of the forest and saw a pair of red eyes in the dark forest. It lay on the ground, its hair standing on end, and trembled. Even if it had some spiritual intelligence, it couldn't connect this with the strange human that it saw just now. Big cat, make way for me. I'll treat you to a meal, and we won't owe each other anything. Ha ha ha. In ancient times, Buddha sacrificed himself to feed the tiger. Today, Li Qingshan killed the thief to feed the tiger. Isn't he better than Buddha? Gulp, gulp, gulp. The strong wine entered his throat, and he was as wild as a tiger. After a while, a handsome young man walked out of the forest. The clouds parted, and the sun shone brightly. He licked the blood at the corner of his mouth and smiled peacefully. His stomach growled a few times, and a strange feeling rose in his heart. Just now, it was just anger. You want to drink my heart? I'll taste your heart. However, after eating it, the taste was surprisingly good. The rich spiritual energy merged into every inch of his flesh, and it was still jumping in his mouth. When he bit down, it was like a juicy beef ball. Then, he couldn't resist the urge and ate to his heart's content. If he didn't have humanity, he probably wouldn't have been able to wait until the tiger came. Was it because of the spiritual energy? No. When he ate the Frost Wolf King, the spiritual energy was richer, but he didn't feel this way. It was hunger, the law of heaven and earth of the human realm. He returned this long-lost feeling to him, and he once again had the instincts of a living creature. And as the spirit of all things, humans were to demons. Perhaps they were really delicious. He couldn't help but smile. It seemed like such an ordinary world, but it actually hid so many mysteries. He opened his palm, and there was an exquisite wooden bookmark. It was exactly the same as the bookmark he found in the Dragon Pool Immortal's cave. He found it on the bandit leader's body. He lowered his head and sniffed lightly. Other than the disgusting smell of the bandit leader's sweat, there was another smell that was even thicker. There was a faint trace of a clear spiritual aura, which was definitely not something a mortal could possess. Although he did not know the effects of this item, it was definitely not something a bandit could possess. He recalled what the bandits had said. Cultivators? It can't be. When he followed the smell to the bandit's lair, he found a young man with a swollen nose and a swollen face. He was completely naked and tied up like a pig. All right, Li Qingshan exhaled. Judging from this guy's aura, he really was a chi practitioner. Moreover, his aura was exactly the same as the one on the wooden bookmark. Yes, he was a chi practitioner who had been captured by bandits. From the looks of it, he was going to be used as an accompaniment to wine. The young man was ashamed and anxious as he said, "Save me, save me." There was the taste of peppercorns in his mouth. Li Qingshan took out the wooden bookmark. "Is this yours?" The young man's eyes immediately lit up. "It's mine." Where did you get this from? Did you kill those bandits?" "Those bandits were eaten by tigers. I picked it up." The young man let out a sigh of relief. He immediately forgot about his current predicament. He said reluctantly, "Can you return it to me?" Li Qingshan said, "Sure." "That's fantastic. Heaven helps the worthy. Can you help me untie this rope? Tell me first, what's the use of this thing?" Li Qingshan waved the wooden bookmark in front of him. This is my family heirloom. It's not very useful. It's just a souvenir." The young man's expression changed slightly. His eyes flickered. Li Qingshan smiled. He found the box of bookmarks. Could it be that they were all family heirlooms of this type? There were several hundred of them. Could it be that they were all this lamb's family heirlooms? Could it be that Chuolong is your ancestor? It's real. It's useless even if you take it. You saved my life. I'll definitely repay you in the future. I'm a qi practitioner. Li Qingshan asked, "You're a qi practitioner. How did you end up being captured by a group of bandits?" In the 9 continents, even the weakest qi practitioner could easily kill hundreds or thousands of bandits. Needless to say, in the original world of the 5 continents, they were called innate experts. Each and every one of them stood at the peak of the world. Sigh, 2 fists can't fight 4 hands. Especially that bandit leader. His blade technique is very powerful. Although I know a few spells, I can't compare to his blade. But when I succeed in establishing my foundation, I won't be afraid of hundreds or thousands of bandits. The young man tried his best to raise his head. He wanted to put on a proud expression, but he only looked more and more pathetic. "Fine, I'll ask you again. What's the use of this thing? Didn't I tell you? It's my family heirloom." One must always be on guard against others. But I'm your savior. It's not appropriate for you to lie to me twice. Li Qingshan faintly revealed the aura of the Imperial Ultimate World Destruction record. The young man only felt that he suddenly became overbearing and couldn't look straight at him. It was as if he could kill him at any time. He shouted, "Senior!" Junior had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. I'll tell you. This is the writ of immortal ascension." Writ of immortal ascension? Li Qingshan was stunned. He looked at the wooden bookmark in his hand. This is it. Then wouldn't he be able to ascend several hundred times? Moreover, judging from the spiritual aura, this kind of wooden bookmark was the worst. With a wave of his hand, the rope was destroyed. The young man crawled up from the ground. He didn't even bother to find clothes to cover his body. He raised his butt and knelt on the ground. He said excitedly, "Junior is you, Inkai. What's Senior's cultivation level? Could it be that you've already formed your core?" Li Qingshan said, "Am I the one asking you, or are you asking me? How are you going to ascend with this thing?" The young man said, "Senior must have come from afar. Otherwise, how could you not recognize this thing? This is a Xian wooden bookmark passed down by the Wanxiang sect. The Wanxiang sect accepts disciples once every 10 years. You can participate in the examination with this item. If you pass, you can enter the sect and perhaps become an immortal. That's why it's commonly known as the Writ of Immortal Ascension." Wanxiang sect? I seem to have heard of this name. What are the benefits of joining this Wanxiang sect? Li Qingshan's mind turned. Even if it was just for self-preservation, he had to find out more about the Wanxiang sect. Moreover, he had a lot of writ of immortal ascension in his hands. Zhu Inkai said, "This has endless benefits." Suddenly, Li Qingshan's stomach growled. Looking at his fair and clean appearance, his appetite was inexplicably aroused. He licked his lips. At least those bandits were right about one thing. The heart of a cultivator should be more delicious. Why don't you put on your clothes, and we'll find a place to talk slowly. You don't have to be afraid. I've always won people over with my virtue. Zhu Inkai felt a chill run down his spine. He raised his head and saw a youthful face. His eyes were filled with peace and benevolence, making people feel warm. To be continued. Chapter 1361. The path of the bandits' ambush was naturally not deserted. The road was filled with the smell of humans, and as they moved forward, the smell became thicker and thicker. Thud! Along the way, Zhu Yingkai treated a senior like Li Qingshan with great respect. He constantly tried to find something to talk about. If Li Qingshan showed him a bit of respect, he would immediately kneel down and worship him as his master. Li Qingshan asked, "Aren't you going to join Wanxiang's sect? How can you worship me as your master?" This Wanxiang sect is so big, they shouldn't care about these small details. Zhu Yingcai's words were evasive, obviously not understanding the rules of Wanxiang sect, but compared to the distant Wanxiang sect, he wanted to get close to Li Qingshan. Otherwise, if he encountered bandits on the way, he might never reach Wanxiang sect. But it was impossible for him to give up on entering Wanxiang sect and follow a person of unknown origin. So I'm just a small detail. Li Qingshan was a bit disappointed. This Zhu Yingkai knew very little about Wanxiang sect. Basically, it was all legends and speculations. There was no useful information. After all, he was just a qi practitioner, and this was the mortal realm where qi practitioners were not much stronger than mortals. If it wasn't for his good luck, he would have become a bandit's meal. No. A teacher for a day is a father for life. No matter what happens in the future, you will always be my master. Zhu Yingkai vowed, but it was not convincing at all. Let's talk about it in the future. At this time, their field of vision suddenly widened, and they had unknowingly walked out of the forest. At the end of the road was a small village. The sky was getting dark, but there was no smoke rising from the village, and there were no dogs barking or chickens crowing. When they got closer, it turned out to be a deserted village, and it seemed to have been abandoned not long ago. A few hungry wild dogs with bony ribs were fighting over a hungry dog with bony ribs, baring their teeth and growling when people got close. Li Qingshan glanced around. The wild dogs were whimpering and lying on the ground, wagging their tails desperately as if they had seen their master. Maybe they really were just dogs not long ago. Zhu Yingkai was surprised. He picked up the knife he picked up from the bandit's lair and stepped forward bravely. "Do you want me to kill these evil dogs for you to eat?" Li Qingshan said lightly, "I'm afraid there's a lot of human flesh in their stomachs." Human flesh? Zhu Yingcai's expression changed. He looked at the mutilated, hungry man on the ground and hurriedly covered his mouth. "What is this place?" Li Qingshan smelled a lot of messy scents in the air. Apart from blood, there were weapons as well. Many people who did not belong to the village had barged in and taken everyone away, while the people who could not leave remained here and starved to death. The Tao of the human realm was too unreliable. In any case, there were immortals and even true immortals, but it was a chaotic scene. Did he have to witness such a scene right after choosing the Qilin's benevolence path? Zhu Yingkai took out a sheepskin map from the bamboo basket on his back and studied it carefully. This is the border of Bailu country. Is it famous? Of course, he's very famous. Even though it's only 1,000 miles wide, the capital of Bailu country is famous for its prosperity. There's definitely food there. Li Qingshan felt even hungrier. He glanced at the sheepskin map. "Then let's go." He grabbed Zhu Yingkai and soared into the sky. Amidst his ear-piercing screams, they disappeared into the night sky. Li Qingshan retracted the transformations of the 9 transformations of demons and gods, and only used the Extreme Emperor's record of world destruction. With the restrictions of the Tao of the human realm, his speed was not much faster than a bird's, but it didn't take long for him to cover a few hundred miles. When the two landed outside Bailu City, Zhu Yingkai lay on the ground and vomited as he gazed at Li Qingshan in great admiration. "Senior, you can fly? Could you be a nascent soul cultivator?" Li Qingshan said in disdain. "Can't you finish vomiting before talking to me? But is this the prosperous place you were talking about?" Not far away, there was a city gate with the words Bailu City carved on it. Outside the gate, there were shacks of various sizes. The shacks surrounded the entire city, and there were sounds of people moaning and moaning. Even from such a distance, Li Qingshan could smell the stench. Startled by Zhu Yingcai's scream, a group of farmers with sickly faces and shabby clothes surrounded them. Some of them were even armed with hoes and bamboo poles. Who are you people? Where did you come from? How dare you? How dare you be rude to your senior? Fire dragon spell." With Li Qingshan by his side, Zhu Yingcai's courage grew. He chopped the bamboo pole in front of him and waved his hand, sending out a stream of flames that illuminated the terrified faces of the farmers and scorched some of their hair and eyebrows. Li Qingshan saw it clearly. It was not that this guy was being merciful, but that he could only cast a spell of this level, which was not much better than a magic trick. However, the true qi in his dantian was extremely pure and condensed. In the land of the 9 provinces, even a foundation-building cultivator might not have such a true qi. At the same time, the amount of true qi in his dantian was very small. It was no wonder that he was no match for the bandits. It's the warlock of the fatuous king. He must be here to spy on the military situation. Report to the general. The farmers first screamed and retreated, then dropped their weapons and turned around to escape. Military situation. Only then did Li Qingshan realize that the shacks were a military camp, and it seemed that they were still besieging the city. These people were probably the rebel army formed by the refugees. Everything in the deserted village could be explained now. He didn't want to fly into the city directly because he might be noticed by some people. However, the city gate was closed, so there was nothing he could do. He could only hide his breath as much as possible, grab Zhu Yingcai, and jump onto the city wall. The guards on the city wall were very lax. The soldiers were all over the place, and some were even drinking and gambling. They didn't care about the rebel army outside the city, and none of them noticed the figure that suddenly appeared on the city wall. Only a Taoist suddenly opened his eyes, but in the blink of an eye, the figure had already disappeared. He couldn't help but rub his eyes and curse. What bad luck! Everyone else is drinking in Deer Garden, and I have to be on such a lousy errand. Walking on the street in the city, Li Qingshan realized that what Zhu Yingcai said was true. This Deer City was indeed a bustling place. It was already night time, but there was still a lot of noise everywhere. It was a flourishing scene, and the city was only separated from the outside by a city wall. But it was like 2 different worlds. Also, it lived up to its name of Deer City. There were stag, female deer, big deer, and small deer everywhere, walking leisurely on the street. Not only were they not afraid of people, but they even had to make way for them. It was a beautiful scene of people living in harmony with nature. However, there were also many beggars in ragged clothes with numb expressions, begging in sorrow. They were being driven back and forth. After all, a city wall couldn't separate 2 worlds. He also discovered that the pedestrians fed the deer more than they gave alms, and those hungry beggars stared at the fat deer in front of them, drooling, but none of them dared to make a move. Humans were inferior to deer. It was really strange. Was this still considered the way of the human world? If I caught one and ate it, I wonder what would happen. He shook his head and threw the idea of looking for trouble out of his mind. He raised his head and took a deep breath. All kinds of smells in the city entered his nostrils. He chose the most tempting smell and walked through the crowd. Zhu Inkai followed closely behind, his eyes darting around, thinking about how to trick Li Qingshan to go to the Wanxiang sect. Even if he couldn't become a disciple, he would at least have a big bodyguard. With his ability to fly in the sky and burrow into the ground, he would probably be able to arrive in a day. Wouldn't that save him a lot of trouble? Li Qingshan stepped onto a stone bridge. The river under the bridge was gurgling, and the river was full of pleasure boats and pleasure boats. The place where the fragrance came from was a brightly lit building from which the sound of birds talking and bamboo flutes could be heard. The strong smell of cosmetics had already covered the aroma of the food. He didn't need to guess to know where it was. It was indeed worthy of being one of the oldest professions of mankind. And the poem, "The Merchant Girl Doesn't Know the Hatred of the Subjugation of the Country," and sings the flowers in the backyard across the river. Even someone as straightforward as Li Qingshan was familiar with it. She couldn't help but think of Qiu Haitang. Although they met a few times later on, they didn't spend much time together. Moreover, the breaking of the red thread of yearning made her quite sad, but after a while, she felt much better. Senior, wait for me." Zhu Inkai caught up with him breathlessly. It took him a lot of effort to catch up with Li Qingshan's footsteps. He saw a faint smile on his handsome face, revealing an expression of nostalgia. There was a kind of indescribable gentleness and peace, as if there was a faint halo which made him stunned. He couldn't help but think, "Senior has saved my life. If I still want to use him, am I still a human?" Several women passing by the bridge forgot to look at the road in a daze and almost fell into the water. But the most sensitive reaction was not him or them, but a group of little beggars whose gender couldn't be distinguished, with the desire to survive. As if they saw the real life coming, they rushed up one after another, holding a broken bowl. "Sir, give me a mouthful of food. I'm starving to death." Me too. I haven't eaten for 3 days. Wah, 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 wah." Some people simply cried, their faces full of snot and tears. Immediately, they surrounded Li Qingshan tightly. He saw how they were all skinny, which made them seem quite pitiful. He waved his hand. "Let's go. I'll treat you to a great meal." The little beggars fell silent and forgot to make a fuss or cry. They had only wanted to ask for a few copper coins, but they didn't expect it to turn into a feast. Returning to his senses, he cheered and followed behind Li Qingshan, charging towards the brightly lit building. He did not care what kind of place it was. If he, Li Qingshan, wanted to eat, he obviously wanted to eat the best. Only then did Zhu Inkai snap out of his daze and hurriedly followed, praising Senior in his heart, bringing a bunch of little beggars to a brothel. Senior really is a master of his generation, but since he's so kind, I'm sure he won't refuse me if I ask him to give me a ride. Li Qingshan strode forward and parted the crowd, heading towards the largest money-squandering establishment in Whitestag, Windstream. All the beggars on the street followed behind him. He looked like the leader of a beggar's sect, but he forgot one thing. He didn't have a single copper coin on him, so how could his Sumeru ring contain such items? Even if he did, he would probably scoff inwardly. "I don't pay for eating people, so why should I pay for eating?" Chapter 1362. Without much time to think, the splendid building was already in front of them. It was hidden among several peach and plum trees in the courtyard in front of the door, revealing a bit of tranquility. Men and women coming and going were all well-dressed and arrogant. If the refugees outside the city were evil ghosts wailing in the Hell Tao, then they were the celestial beings in the way of heaven. The beggars swallowed their saliva and looked hesitant, not daring to go forward. The so-called oppressive wealth was just like this. The celestial beings were alarmed by the movement in the courtyard and discussed in surprise, Uh, why are there so many beggars outside? Are they here to make trouble? Now, there is a lot of noise outside the city. The middle-aged madam was greeting people in the hall. She hurried to the door and shouted angrily, "Guards! Guards! Where are they? Where are the guards? Where are the guards? Where the hell did they all go? Beat these beggars out of here." A few burly and fierce-looking guards rushed out. The leader of the guards reeked of alcohol, and there was a scar on his face. The smell of alcohol and anger surged into his body, and his scar turned bright red, making him look incredibly ferocious. "Fuck, a group of stinky beggars. Are you tired of living? How dare you find trouble in front of my door?" Without saying anything, he slapped a little beggar, setting off a strong wind. It was obvious that he had kung fu. This slap would at least take half of the beggar's life. In the air, it fell into a white and slender palm. The little beggar, who had escaped, rolled and crawled backward. The beggars retreated in panic, revealing the figure of Li Qingshan. His chest rose and fell a few times. He muttered a few times, "Win people over with virtue." Just now, he raised his head and smiled. "These are all my guests." He stood in the swaying lights and mottled shadows of the trees. His eyes were as soft as a pool of clear water. No woman could move their eyes away from his face, and exclaimed, "What a handsome Langjun!" It was Madam's love money and girls love beauty. For a moment, they were worried for him. "Your guests." The head guard's eyes widened. He tried to pull his hand back a few times, but it was as if he had fallen into an iron hoop. With a sudden pull, Li Qingshan let go of his hand. He plopped down on the ground and cursed, "You brat, are you here to cause trouble? Brothers, attack." The guards rubbed their fists and were about to pounce on him. "Wait, you guys step back first. I'll ask him." The madam saw that Li Qingshan was handsome and had an extraordinary appearance. He also had a calm demeanor, as if everything was under his control. She had only seen this kind of demeanor in a few people. All of them were powerful people who wielded great power, and behind them was a fair-skinned companion with a long saber in his hand. He immediately did not dare to be careless. "Young master, where are you from? Why are you treating these beggars to a meal? If there was such a young master in the city, how could she not have heard of him? If he was an outsider, there was no need for him to cause trouble." Li Qingshan cupped his hands in greeting. "Big sister, I came from a faraway place. Coincidentally, I was hungry and wanted to have a big meal. Seeing that these children are so hungry and really pitiful, I might as well treat them to a meal. Can you do me a favor?" It was hard for him to pretend to be so courteous, but the madam did not fall for it. Once she heard that he came from a faraway place, she felt that a strong dragon could not suppress a snake in its own land. "What kind of place is this? How can I allow you to bring a group of beggars to behave atrociously? If it was someone else, they would have beaten him out of the door." However, his words were polite, and his appearance was really lovable. She looked him up and down. "These beggars are reincarnated as ghosts who died of hunger. Please forgive me for asking, did young master bring enough money? Our floral fragrance restaurant's food is very expensive." "Money?" Li Qingshan was empty-handed. There was only a sumaru ring on his hand. Naturally, there was not a single coin in it. He glanced at Zhu Inkai beside him. "Did you bring money?" "Of course." Zhu Inkai wholeheartedly wanted Li Qingshan to send him to the Wanxiang sect. It was a rare opportunity for him to show off. He immediately put down the bamboo basket behind him and took out all his money. There were a few large pieces of silver and a small piece of gold. That's right, most of it was looted from the bandits' lair. The entire restaurant roared with laughter. The madam smiled with pity. This bit of gold and silver is probably only enough to order a small pot of wine and a few side dishes. However, you are a guest from afar. If young master is hungry, this sister will take out her private money and invite young master to our restaurant for a drink. She reached out and lightly pinched Li Qingshan's hand. She turned around and her expression changed. What are you all standing there for? Hurry up and beat these stinking beggars out. Wait, what else does young master want to say? Besides money, do you also accept anything else? The madam smiled. What does young master have? Mom, quickly let him come up and let the sisters check him. This caused another round of laughter. At this time, the entire restaurant had come out to watch the commotion. Every window was crowded with people. Li Qingshan smiled. Since this place is called Fragrant Flower Restaurant, you must like flowers. However, looking at the hundreds of withered flowers in this courtyard, it is a bit unworthy of the name. I will give you a peach blossom tree in exchange for a full meal. Young master really knows how to joke. Not to mention peach blossoms. Even peaches have been eaten. As the saying goes, sincerity can split open metal and stone. As long as you have the heart, flowers can bloom again and fruits can grow again. Are you willing to agree? Everyone in the restaurant jeered. A peach blossom tree in exchange. For a full meal, this young master is really kind and elegant. I also want to eat a peach. I am willing to exchange it with a golden bean. Although the madam's face was full of disbelief, she did not want to go against the wishes of so many customers. She smiled. Then let me see where young master's flowers are and where the fruits are. If you can really do it, even if it is only one peach blossom, one peach, I will let these beggars have a full meal. Then it's a deal. Li Qingshan walked to a peach tree. This peach tree had luxuriant branches and leaves like a canopy. It was unknown how many years it had grown. He caressed the rough trunk of the tree and silently activated the Qilin's strategy of longevity. In an instant, flowers bloomed all over the tree. White, light pink, dark red, and so on. Countless colors swayed in the night wind, and a strong fragrance filled the entire restaurant. And between the branches, peaches formed and grew rapidly. Ah! Everyone's eyes widened as they looked at this scene in disbelief. The madam's mouth opened so wide that she could almost swallow a peach. Even Zhu Yingkai, who knew how powerful Li Qingshan was, let out a sound of admiration. This kind of method to reverse the seasons was simply unbelievable. The hope in his heart became even more fervent. He must become a true cultivator. Everyone came back to their senses and exclaimed one after another. The ladies looked at Li Qingshan with even more splendor. The madam lowered her body and smiled flatteringly. So, young master is a sorcerer. Instead of drinking royal wine in Deer Garden, you came here to play with me. Li Qingshan said, the flowers and fruits are here. Hurry up and take out the food. Don't use the leftovers to fool me. How dare you? How dare you? I will instruct the kitchen now. The madam said hurriedly. The beggars cheered. Chapter 1363. When he heard the term fellow, Li Qingshan really felt like it had been a long time since he had heard it. Afterwards, his heart shivered. There was actually a cultivator in the building, and he actually failed to notice it. Of course, it was because it was too noisy, so he did not use his soul sense to investigate. However, this was completely unimaginable in the 9 provinces, let alone the world of 5 continents. He could even see through a person's thoughts. The laws of the mortal realm greatly suppressed the power of the manifestation of the Taoist arts, including even sensing and probing. Even the spirit turtle's premonitions became abnormally blurry. Instead, he relied on his sense of smell the most here. Then he thought back to the feeling of being watched just now, as well as the strange cry of a deer. He could not help but sink into his thoughts. Was it too careless of him to reveal his technique in the city? At this moment, a middle-aged man drifted down, but he was even more exquisite and luxurious. His thin face sported 3 long strands of beard, and his green robes were rather similar to a Taoist's robes. He seemed rather sage-like. He circled around the peach blossom tree a few times and even plucked a flower to crush it. He placed it in his mouth and tasted it, confirming that it was an actual peach blossom and not a low-quality smokescreen. Afterwards, he arrived before Li Qingshan and asked in surprise, "What technique is this? How did you do it, fellow?" "A foundation establishment cultivator," Li Qingshan asked. "That's right, a mere foundation establishment cultivator." The middle-aged man stroked his long beard and said rather complacently, "You're too kind." Li Qingshan smiled. It was exactly because of the restraints of the laws of the world that the human realm was not a world where nascent soul cultivators roamed the streets and golden core cultivators were as common as dogs. Regular qi practitioners were only warlocks. They could not even be regarded as cultivators. There were definitely many cultivators who were more powerful than him, but scattered across the vast human realm, the chances of running into them were basically negligible. If he did not even dare to use a single technique, he would be being overly cautious. "I am Siep Maosher. May I ask for your name and your cultivation?" Siep Maosher glanced at Zhu Inkai and could tell that he was a qi practitioner, but he could not tell the cultivation of the handsome man before him. However, as the saying went, an expert can tell with a single move. This person was no ordinary person. Li Qingshan, nascent soul. Li Qingshan released a bit of his aura. However, he did his best to hide the destructive and tyrannical side of the Extreme Emperor's record of world destruction, temporarily changing it to the Extreme Emperor's record of the world. Naturally, it exuded an air of nobility, as if the world was in the palm of his hand. A nascent soul cultivator. Siep Maosher turned pale, with fright. Initially, he had already guessed that the other party's cultivation was higher than his, perhaps a core formation cultivator, but he didn't expect it to be this high. He hurriedly tidied up his clothes and bowed deeply. "So it is Senior Li who has graced us with his presence. Please forgive me for my rudeness." Zhu Inkai finally got confirmation from Li Qingshan. His face was also full of amazement, but then he thought, Yuanying cultivator, that's a legendary figure. If I can take him as my master, not going to the myriad phenomenon sect would be worth it. Most people didn't understand the meaning behind the 2 words, Yuanying, but they were very familiar with Siep Maosher. He was a person who sat on the same level as the king and addressed each other as fellow cultivators. He was famous for being casual and not bothering about trifles. They had never seen him so respectful to someone before. The eyes of the ladies were filled with splendor. They couldn't imagine that such a handsome young man would have such a high position among the warlocks. Siep Maosher also couldn't believe it, but then he thought about how those great cultivators didn't look old. That was why he called him senior and considered himself as a junior, afraid of offending him in the slightest. That would be an unexpected disaster. The brothel keeper's body became even shorter. She carefully said, "Sir Li, the food will be ready soon, very soon. Please go upstairs and have a seat." Siep Maosher waved his big sleeves. "Why upstairs? This kind of brothel is a disgrace to senior." The brothel keeper's expression stiffened, but she didn't dare to refute. She scolded in her heart, "You old pervert, when do you not come to my floral fragrance brothel? Why don't you die of shame?" "Humph, I think you're afraid that if this young masterly comes, which lady will still care about you?" Siep Maosher really didn't have such a thought. He was just too excited to see a living Yuanying cultivator. This was an extremely rare opportunity. "Senior, The king is currently holding a banquet in Deer Cry Park for cultivators from all over. Why don't we go and drink a few cups of royal wine? No, no, no. That's too disrespectful to Senior. I'll send someone to the palace to pass on the message. If I know that Senior is coming, I'll definitely come and welcome you personally. The king is holding a banquet for cultivators. Why don't you go? Li Qingshan's heart moved. He was just about to find out some information. So wasn't this a good opportunity? Besides, there were starving corpses everywhere outside the city, and the luxurious life inside the city made him a little uncomfortable. He wanted to meet this incapable ruler and ask him why he was so muddle-headed. Xia Maosher said shamefully, "Junior is greedy and lustful. I've embarrassed myself in front of Senior." Li Qingshan smiled and said, "A real man will naturally be romantic. There's nothing funny about it." Xia Maosher's eyes lit up. "A real man will naturally be romantic. Senior is indeed open-minded. I can't compare to you. I'll order someone to go to the palace and inform the king to open the palace gates to welcome Senior's arrival. There's no need. Just tell me which direction Deer Cry Park is in, and roughly how far is it?" Zhu Yingkai instantly understood what Li Qingshan wanted to do, and immediately covered his mouth with both hands. Xia Maosher looked at him strangely, but didn't dare to disobey Li Qingshan's intentions. He pointed in the direction and told him the distance. "Treat my guests well." Li Qingshan instructed the old procuress again. Just as the old procuress was about to reply, she saw 3 figures soaring into the sky, flying in the direction of the imperial city. She was so shocked that she fell to the ground. "Immortals! Old procuress, send me a few peaches. I'll pay 5 taels of gold. No, 10 taels of gold for them. I'll pay 20 taels of gold. Mother, I want to eat them too." The entire building was filled with noise, and the old procuress was energized. "1 peach for 10 taels of gold. This is the base price. My esteemed guests, please state your price. This is a fair transaction, and the highest bidder wins. If my daughters want to have a taste, they'll have to beg the guests around them." She then instructed a few pimps. "All of you, treat Sir Li's esteemed guests well. Let them have a good meal. It'll be considered as me doing good deeds." At the same time, in a beautiful imperial palace, deep in the forest, the cries of deer could be heard, and in a pavilion surrounded by clear water, palace maids dressed in light muslin walked back and forth like the clouds, their footsteps light and graceful. The emperor and his ministers were tasting the delicacies while enjoying the music and dance, and the sound of flowing water. It was a leisurely and carefree atmosphere. There was a loud bang as something fell from the sky, causing waves of water to ripple. It was as if a storm was pouring down on the pavilion, startling the palace maids and messing up the music. For a moment, the hairpins in the hair were disheveled and the cups were overturned. The emperor and his ministers were all shocked. The emperor of White Deer shouted, "Protect the emperor! Protect the emperor!" He had completely forgotten about his own cultivation level. The ordinary chi practitioners were even worse off. One of them even crawled under the table, his buttocks still sticking out. Below the pavilion, a voice shouted, "Your Majesty, don't panic, it's me, XH 118. Chapter 1364. Is that you, Minister Xie? The King of White Deer looked around when he heard the voice. How did you fall from the sky and cause such a huge commotion? Your Majesty, I brought a senior with me to attend the banquet. Below the pavilion, Xie Maosher's face was pale and his stomach churned. He finally understood why Zhu Yingkai was covering his mouth just now. As a foundation establishment cultivator, he could already fly with the wind. However, he was only 3 to 5 feet tall and could only travel about 7 to 8 miles. He had never experienced such a feeling of flying. Looking at Li Qingshan beside him, who was standing steadily on the surface of the water, the king of white deer no longer had any doubts about his cultivation. If he was not a nascent soul cultivator, how could he be so powerful? Oh, senior? Who is this senior? The king of white deer was extremely clear about Xie Maosher's cultivation. When he heard the word senior, his interest was immediately piqued. He quickly tidied up his clothes and sat firmly on his throne, exuding the majesty of a king. He is a nascent soul cultivator. Is that true? The king of white deer's eyes lit up. Ignoring the mess in the banquet hall, he rushed over to the side of the pavilion in a hurry. Leaning against the railing, he looked down and happened to make eye contact with Li Qingshan's jade-green eyes. As if he had been stunned by an invisible force, he immediately became speechless. Originally, Li Qingshan felt rather disdainful towards the muddle-headed and incompetent king of white deer. He was the ruler of a country, yet he had managed the country to such a state, purposefully taking him down a notch. Right now, his gaze was filled with judgment, which obviously possessed the power to subdue him. Unexpectedly, the king of white deer country did not look like the incapable ruler that they had imagined. Instead, he was tall and slender, his eyes were clear and bright, and he wore a crown on his head. His appearance was extraordinary, and he actually had the cultivation of a foundation establishment cultivator. He did not look like an incapable ruler at all. If he was really an idiot, how could he cultivate? Even a qi practitioner would need to put in a lot of effort and intelligence, let alone a foundation establishment cultivator. Welcome, senior. I apologize for not going out to meet you. Please come up and have a chat. The ruler of White Deer Country had a fervent expression on his face, not the slightest bit angered by Li Qingshan's display of power. Instead, he became even more courteous. He didn't look like the ruler of a country at all. He looked more like a junior who had met a senior expert. Li Qingshan had experienced many things in the world, so he could naturally see that his attitude was not fake. It was so sincere that he could not find any fault with it. Carrying Zhu Yingkai, Xie Maosher, and Zhu Yingkai leaped lightly onto the pavilion. Looking around, the guests were indeed qi practitioners. It was a gathering of cultivators. It was just that it was a little too low-end. The other guests also stood up. Most of them were soaked in water and looked quite wretched, but none of them dared to be disrespectful to Li Qingshan. In fact, some of them even had looks of anger on their faces as they bowed and greeted, "Senior." Li Qingshan nodded his head reservedly. The White Deer Country lord then asked, "How did Minister Xie meet this senior?" Xie Maosher recounted everything that had happened in Flowery Fragrance House. From the beginning to the end, the White Deer Country lord was even more shocked. Seems like such a spell is just a small trick to the senior. This broadened the horizons of those mortals. It was truly a blessing that had been cultivated for 3 lifetimes. Men, remove the old banquet and replace it with a new one. Musicians, play some music to welcome the senior's arrival. He then invited Li Qingshan to a seat of honor while he sat beside him. The sound of bamboo instruments could be heard again. Li Qingshan watched as the almost untouched dishes were swept into the wooden buckets by the palace maids. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. What was the meaning of the saying, "Wine and meat go to waste in a luxurious house, and bones freeze to death on the streets"? He couldn't help but mock, "Fellow Taoist, you are really broad-minded. Carefree and carefree." Hearing the word fellow Taoist, the White Deer Country lord was even more delighted. "Why do you say so, senior? How can I be worthy of such a compliment? The city is surrounded by soldiers, and you still have the mood to hold a banquet?" The White Deer Country lord waved his hand nonchalantly. "Senior, you don't have to worry about it. They are just a bunch of lowly commoners. They only dared to do this because they were instigated by bandits. Let's starve them for a few days, and the city will be defused. Let's starve them to death. Dead, people won't cause any more trouble, right? Li Qingshan raised his eyebrows. Just by looking at the lax guards on the city walls and the starving beggars in the city, he knew that the city would not be able to hold on for long. The White Deer Country Lord clapped his hands and laughed. "Senior, you are right." Li Qingshan was so angry that he laughed. What an incapable ruler! The White Deer Country Lord was not angry at all. An incapable ruler is just a pile of dirt in 100 years. Only by cultivating can one live a long life and live a carefree life. Otherwise, one is just an ant. I no longer care about the matters of the mortal world. Even the position of ruler has become a burden to me. Fortunately, I will be able to take it off my shoulders soon and continue my cultivation in the Myriad Elephant Sect. The Myriad Elephant Sect again. Li Qingshan raised his guard and asked, "You must have obtained the writ of immortal ascension." "What writ of immortal ascension?" "That's just a rumor spread by ignorant people. It's actually just a bookmark. The Myriad Elephant Sect has carved many of them. If one could ascend to immortality just by obtaining one, then the world would be filled with immortals long ago." The White Deer Country Lord laughed as he took out a brass bookmark from his sleeves. It was exactly the same as the bookmark Li Qingshan had obtained from the Huilong's cave. Its number was second only to that of the mystic wood bookmark. But don't underestimate this bookmark. When I reach the Myriad Elephant Sect, I will have many uses for it. To put it bluntly, this bookmark is like a mortal's gold and silver. If you want anything, you have to use this bookmark to exchange for it. Li Qingshan immediately understood the use of the box of bookmarks. In the Myriad Elephant Sect, bookmarks were used as currency. In other words, the money that Huilong had saved up was divided according to the amount of spiritual qi and the number of bookmarks. Green jade was the most valuable, followed by silver, brass, and mystic wood. Zhu Yingcai's bookmark was made of mystic wood, while the White Deer Country Lord's bookmark was made of brass. It seemed that this had something to do with their cultivation levels. It sounds like you understand the Myriad Elephant Sect very well. The White Deer Country Lord said proudly, "Of course, our great princess is cultivating in the Myriad Elephant Sect." Great princess? Li Qingshan was surprised. He had only heard of the great emperor. What the hell was a great princess? It was no wonder that although the White Deer Country Lord was respectful to him, he was not as fearful as Xie Maosher. He had thought that it was because he had the temperament of a king, but now it seemed that there was someone above him. Ordinary mortal kingdoms only last for 100 or 200 years. If it weren't for the great princess, how could the White Deer Country have survived for thousands of years? Li Qingshan thought to himself. He really was at odds with the Myriad Elephant Sect. However, this was the Myriad Elephant Sect's territory, and all cultivators were related to the Myriad Elephant Sect. He had to be careful when dealing with them. So he asked, "What is the great princess's cultivation level?" The White Deer Country Lord cupped his hands towards the sky. "The great princess is a direct disciple of the Myriad Elephant Sect. She has undergone 5 heavenly tribulations and is a human sovereign." Li Qingshan was shocked. It was not only because of the great princess's cultivation level, but also because she was a disciple of the Myriad Elephant Sect. That meant that the sect leader and the elders above her were human immortals who had undergone at least 6 heavenly tribulations. According to Luo Ho Xiaoming's conjecture, the Myriad Elephant Sect was likely to have a perfected immortal. The Myriad Elephant Sect was definitely a colossus that he could not afford to offend. Even if he were to face the great princess alone, he would still be far from being her match. He had personally experienced the power of the Hui dragon. Furthermore, it was restricted by the laws of the 9 provinces. In addition, he did not bring the real true dragon emperor sword with him. If they were to fight again in the mortal realm, he would have no chance of winning. However, he would not be intimidated by a mere title. He shouted, "So you are fearless and not afraid that your kingdom will be destroyed?" In an instant, his aura was released. The lights on the pavilion flickered, and the palace lanterns were extinguished one after another. What do you want to do?" The White Deer Country Lord trembled. As a cultivator, he knew how terrifying a powerful cultivator could be. A realm higher meant a world of difference. The White Deer Country Lord's cultivation level was 2 realms higher than his. If the White Deer Country Lord wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as killing a bug. Senior, please calm down." Siet Mausher hurriedly tried to calm him down. All the guests trembled and wanted to leave first. On the other hand, the surrounding guards pulled out their swords and shouted, "How dare you! Release His Majesty!" Chapter 1365. I have the protection of the great princess. If you dare harm a single hair on me, she won't let you off. I've already sent her a message in the Imperial Ancestral Temple. She'll be here soon. Ouch! The King of White Deer threatened loudly, which made Li Qingshan even more furious. With a smack, he slapped the incapable ruler across the face, knocking off his high hat and disheveled his hair. "Humph! Even a single hair on you? In your dreams." The king felt as if his bones had been broken by the slap. His body went limp, and he begged again. Senior, we're kindred spirits. Why are you angry at me for those lowly commoners? When Her Royal Highness the Grand Supreme Princess arrives, I'll put in a few good words for you in front of her and ask her to bestow you a green jade lot so that you can also join the Wanxiang sect. In the future, we'll be fellow disciples. Whose kindred spirits with you? You have a green jade lot. Li Qingshan raised an eyebrow. Zhu Yingcai's lot was made of profound wood, while the King of White Deer's lot was made of brass. In terms of cultivation, he would need a green jade lot to use the Immortal's Tablet of Ascension. A green jade lot is so precious. I'm just a foundation establishment cultivator. How could I have one? With your cultivation at the 3rd stage of the heavenly tribulation, you need a green jade lot to join the Myriad sect. If you're willing to help me kill those rebels outside the city, the great princess will definitely reward you generously. The White Deer Country is named after her. It's her motherland. The king couldn't help but reveal his true intentions. The people outside the city were like a raging fire. They had been besieging the city for nearly a month, and there were beggars everywhere. Chaos could break out at any time. Once the city was breached, the consequences would be unimaginable. He had already sent a message to the great princess of the Myriad sect asking for help, but there had been no reply. This time, he had gathered all the warlocks for a banquet. He was already preparing to escape the city and join the Myriad sect. However, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to explain himself to the great princess. Just as he said, the White Deer Country was the motherland of the great princess. Who knew what kind of punishment would befall the country under his rule? He pretended not to care and continued to hold the banquet. Firstly, he was confident that he could escape the city with his cultivation. Secondly, it was to deceive people and reassure them. When he saw Li Qingshan, a great nascent soul stage cultivator, an idea came to his mind. He planned to treat Li Qingshan to a feast first, and when he was drunk and couldn't refuse, he would beg Li Qingshan to take action and defeat the rebels outside the city. Then he would be able to get away easily. who knew that Li Qingshan's temper was so explosive, completely different from what he looked like on the surface. Even after hearing the name of the Wanxiang sect, they still dared to make a move against him. "You muddle-headed ruler, you wanted me to help you get out of this predicament. Humph, you wish." Li Qingshan's heart was filled with killing intent. His eyes were about to emit a red light, but he suddenly thought of something and quietly restrained himself. The Emperor of White Deer sat down on the ground. At this time, new delicacies and wine were brought in by the palace servants. When the palace attendants saw that the monarch was being held in someone's hand, they were all pale with fright and didn't dare to approach. Li Qingshan felt extremely hungry and shouted, "Give me the meat, or I'll dig out your hearts and livers to go with the wine." The Emperor of White Deer shouted from under his, "But what are you all standing there for? Hurry up and bring the wine and food to the senior." Li Qingshan drank the wine and ate the food as soon as they were served. He acted as if there was no one else around and fell into deep thought. He wanted to walk the path of the Qilin and win people over with virtue, but why did he end up becoming murderous? The Qilin's strategy of longevity didn't improve at all, and it was even more difficult to deal with than the Phoenix Nirvana Sutra. Could it be that I'm not a good person from birth and can only kill and set fires because I can't cultivate good karma? After eating and drinking to his heart's content, he made up his mind that he had to go to the Wanxiang sect. Only by coming into contact with stronger cultivators would he be able to truly understand the Tao of the human world and find the path to the bottomless abyss, accumulating resources for further cultivation. The only problem was that although he had the green jade lot from the Dragon Pool Cave, it was not convenient for him to take it out. After all, it was much more valuable than the Mysticwood lot. If the Wanxiang sect questioned him about his origins, it would be difficult for him to answer. He might even expose himself and fall into their trap. Zhu Yingkai suddenly said, "Senior, I have a favor to ask." "What is it?" Li Qingshan glanced at him from the corner of his eye. Seeing the conflicted look on his face, he could guess what he was thinking. He wanted Li Qingshan to bring him to the Wanxiang sect, but he was also afraid that the Grand Princess would hold a grudge against him because of him. It was only now that he made up his mind, but he was still panicking. "If Senior wants to join the Wanxiang sect, could you bring me along? There are too many bandits along the way. If I had to walk alone, I might not be able to reach the destination in my lifetime." Li Qingshan said, "All right." Zhu Yingkai was overjoyed. "Really?" He kowtowed a few more times. "Thank you for your kindness, Senior." Under Li Qingshan's, but the king of Bailu called out, "Senior, could you bring me along as well?" It was not easy to leave the city. Although he could fly for a short distance, he could not go more than 10 miles. If he fell into the hands of the bandits, he would be in danger. Those bandits hated him to the core and would do anything to kill him. Li Qingshan was stunned by his shamelessness. He patted the king's head and said, "Thank you for your hospitality, fatuous ruler. You're on your own now." Grabbing Zhu Yingkai, the White Deer Heavenly King flew away. He crawled out from under the table and spat venomously. "Just you wait. When I reach the Myriad Elephant sect, I will definitely report this matter to Her Highness, the Grand Princess." The night wind whistled. Li Qingshan looked down from the sky. The lights in the city were waning. There were few people on the streets. Most of them had already gone to bed. Only a few beggars were wandering around, rummaging through trash. The darkness of the night highlighted the campfires in the surrounding refugee camps. It was as if a wildfire had surrounded the city and was slowly burning away. No one knew when the fire would break. Zhu Yingkai had flown twice and had become much bolder. He asked loudly, "Senior, are we going to the Wanxiang sect now?" "Wait for me here." Li Qingshan tossed Zhu Inkai onto the top of a tall pagoda and landed silently in front of the Flowery Fragrance restaurant. The noisy and lively Fenglu city had also quietened down at this moment. The doors were already tightly shut, and the lights were already dim. Only 2 rows of red lanterns remained, illuminating the swaying shadows of the trees. Li Qingshan came to the peach tree and touched its trunk again. The peach blossoms fell, and the green leaves withered. The tree was dead. He had stimulated its life force, but he had also used up all of its life force. Perhaps he had helped a group of beggars eat their fill, but could he still be considered a Qilin after killing them? Killing the incompetent emperor was indeed satisfying. Putting aside the princess and the Wanxiang sect, the death of the incompetent emperor would definitely cause chaos in the city. What good would the refugees do when they break into the city? It would be hard to avoid another round of looting and looting, turning Whitestag into a living hell. What crime would the people in the city have? I did not kill Boren, but Boren died because of me. He suddenly realized that the path of the Qilin wasn't as simple as it seemed. It wasn't enough to have a benevolent heart and a bit of compassion. Many times, he had too many worries and couldn't act freely. Even when he wanted to be a hero, he was restrained. After such a long time, I still haven't mastered the first stage of the Qilin strategy of longevity. Perhaps it's because I haven't understood the essence of it and only want to win people over with virtue. But ever since I entered the human realm, have I done anything that counts as winning people over with virtue? He sat cross-legged under the peach tree and silently practiced the Qilin strategy of longevity. His experiences since coming to the human realm flashed before his eyes. The Qilin was a benevolent divine beast. Did benevolence mean doing good deeds? But what was good? Killing a tree to save a person, killing a city to kill an incompetent emperor, and killing countless people because of a single thought of benevolence. No, this wasn't the path of the Qilin. If I sacrificed the sky-climbing vine to save all the people in the 9 states, I wouldn't have succeeded either. Killing an ant to save a person was not a Qilin. Killing one to save 10,000 was not a Qilin. Li Qingshan's mind was clear, and he said, "Life and death are determined by fate. It's the same for a tree and the same for a country. Whitestag should have been destroyed a long time ago, but because of the power of cultivators, it survived for 1,000 years. The emperor's goal was to cultivate and didn't have the mood to govern the country. He allowed the people to live in chaos and had no choice but to attack Whitestag. But under the protection of a human emperor, even an army of 1,000,000 couldn't break through the city. They could only starve to death. Most of the survivors survived by eating humans and didn't have the strength to resist. They were chased back to the land by the army in the city, never to rise again until the next time the world descended into chaos. That princess is such a bastard. Is that so?" A gentle female voice suddenly sounded behind Li Qingshan. Floating astronomy. Chapter 1367. All of Li Qingshan's hairs stood on end. Suddenly, he looked back and saw a white deer standing on the roof of a building on the opposite side of the street. Its antlers pierced into the starry sky like translucent coral. A bright moon hung behind its head, illuminating its snow-white fur and twinkling with 9-colored specks. It was clearly so beautiful and enchanting, but it did not give off a domineering aura at all. It was gentle and noble like a smear of moonlight, and he had actually failed to sense its approach. Recalling the name of the Whitestag kingdom and the many wild deer they kept in the city, Li Qingshan asked in surprise, "Don't tell me you're the grand princess? Is there something wrong with your eyes? I'm clearly a 9-colored deer. So how can I be a human princess?" The 9-colored deer leapt up gracefully on its sturdy limbs, arriving before Li Qingshan without a single speck of dust on its hooves. It stared at him with interest with its pitch-black eyes that only had the scara. "Joe, you're talking nonsense again." A slender voice suddenly rang out. The nine-colored deer's voice was already very gentle, but this voice was even softer. Even though it was a scolding, it sounded like a whisper, almost melting into the air. This surprised Li Qingshan yet again. Only now did he notice that there was a woman with long hair as black as ink sitting on the nine-colored deer's back. She seemed to be rather shy with strangers. Her head was lowered, and her eyes were lowered like a shy water lily. However, she just sat there casually. Her figure was much more slender than the average woman, which made Li Qingshan wonder if there was something wrong with his eyes. Otherwise, how could he not have noticed her? Her method of hiding her presence was no worse than the spirit turtle's, which made him even more wary. After a closer look, he discovered that she was not hiding her presence. Instead, she was perfectly blending in with her surroundings. She was as natural as a clump of bamboo that had grown for several decades, and she did not attract any attention at all. The nine-colored deer was able to get so close to him without being noticed. It was probably because of her as well. In the blink of an eye, Li Qingshan came to a conclusion. This woman's cultivation was far above his own, and she was definitely not an opponent he could match up to. In fact, it was very likely that she was the grand princess that the White Deer Country King had spoken of. In addition, the nine-colored deer beneath him seemed to be a strange beast with unknown strength, so he had even less of a chance of victory. With the speed at which she was jumping just now, it would not be easy for her to even escape. "You blockhead, he called you a bastard, and you still don't allow me to speak. Brat, it's not too late to change your words now." The nine-colored deer threatened. However, her appearance was too gentle and elegant, so there wasn't much force behind it. The one who was scolded as a blockhead was the woman. She still lowered her head and said softly, "Others scolding me is their business. What does it have to do with us? If he is right, then we should correct ourselves. Not only should we not be angry, but we should also thank him." "What if I'm wrong? Are you a bastard?" the nine-colored deer asked. "Since I'm not a bastard, then it has nothing to do with us." The nine-colored deer lowered her head with an expression that said, "I've been defeated by you." Li Qingshan was already prepared to fight to the death, but he couldn't help but be stunned when he heard this. What was going on? Not only was she not angry after being scolded, she even spoke up for him. Could it be that I've finally met the legendary good person? Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. It survived in this human garden. The little princess also slowly grew up. She accompanied the white deer every day and never left it. She was jokingly called Princess White Deer by the people. The white deer had long since recovered its strength. The colorful spots on its body became brighter and brighter. It could already easily climb over the high wall, but it stayed because of the princess. Until one day, when they were playing in the garden, a heroic woman wearing light armor descended from the sky. "Wow, there's a nine-colored deer here. How lucky! Little girl, is this your deer? How much money do you want? I'll buy this deer." The white deer couldn't help but retreat. It felt that this woman was terrifying. "Sister, I'm not selling it." The princess shook her head. The woman pinched the princess's cheek. "Little girl, you have a sweet mouth. You don't look like you're poor. How about this? If you give it to me, I'll let you stay young and beautiful forever." Just as the white deer started to worry, the princess said firmly, "Sister, I don't want it." The woman pinched the white deer's cheeks with both hands and pulled hard. TSK, you're too young. You don't know the value of youth. You'll regret it when you grow old." The white deer waved its antlers and pushed the woman's hands away. Sister, I won't regret it. You should go. If the guards find you, it'll be bad. You're a good girl. It's rare for a deer like you to have the heart to protect its master. If I force you two to separate, I'll be unreasonable. If that's the case, then come with me. The woman summoned a gust of wind and carried the princess and the white deer away. She left behind these words, "This girl and this deer are being taken away by the Wanxiang sect's Chao Qianjiao." From then on, the white deer and the princess became legends. Many years later, the king grew old and the enemy invaded the city. The army surrounded the city and attacked for months. They swore to slaughter the people in the city. At this time, the princess rode on the white deer and walked through the air. Her antlers shone brightly, illuminating the night sky. The enemies panicked and did not dare to attack again. The country continued to exist. In order to commemorate and pray for blessings, the country changed its name to the White Deer Country. Raising deer became a trend and was even made the country's law. In front of the king's sickbed, the princess promised that she would protect the city forever and that it would not be invaded by any foreign enemies. At this time, Li Qingshan's ears twitched. He heard a commotion coming from the east gate. The noise was getting louder and louder. There were screams, and the sound of arrows piercing through the air. Gradually, flames rose. Someone shouted, "Kill the incapable king! Kill the white deer!" This was the rebel army's slogan. The rebels have entered the city. The 9-colored deer turned around and snorted in disdain. "Father, Yaozhu is going to miss our appointment." Yaozhu prayed to the heavens. "Jo'er, let's go." She took out a green jade bookmark from her sleeve and handed it to Li Qingshan. "This bookmark is for you. I hope we can meet again in the Wanxiang sect." Li Qingshan took the green jade bookmark. "Consider it a loan." "All right." Yaozhu smiled. The 9-colored deer took a few leaps and disappeared into the sky. The commotion in the city grew louder and louder. Lanterns were lit in the floral fragrance house. Everywhere was ablaze. Li Qingshan gripped the green jade, lot firmly, and paced around the peach tree for a while. He had no idea whether it could survive the fire tonight or not. He sighed gently and slowly rose into the air, overlooking the chaotic city. The buildings were set alight, and the deer were slaughtered. "Senior, save me. I beg you, save me." The king of white deer was surrounded on a tall building by the ants he called. "Whether he persuades or not is up to me. Sigh, what a piece of wood. And it's hollow." The 9-colored deer shook his head helplessly. He turned around and galloped toward the west. As he walked in the pitch-black cave, Li Qingshan suddenly had the illusion that he had returned to the 9 prefectures world and the underground cave. The strong disturbance of the earth-fiendish magnetic field affected the magic power in his body and even the operation of his small world. However, he was not underground at the moment. He was just walking in a mountain range. He could still clearly remember the scene of this mountain range from the sky not long ago. A black mountain that stretched for hundreds of miles was like a black dragon winding its way into the sea. Not a single blade of grass grew on the mountain, as if it was made of black iron. The mountain range sank into the bay, dyeing the seawater pitch black. Thus, it was called Blackwater Bay. However, the name of this mountain was not Primordial Magnetic Mountain, but Black Dragon Mountain. Primordial Magnetic Mountain was just a name. A mountain made of stones was called Stone Mountain, and a mountain rich in copper was called Copper Mountain. This primordial magnetic mountain also produced a type of mineral, primordial magnetic iron, which could be used to create magical weapons that could break through true Kong armor. It was a very valuable mineral. However, It was not easy to mine this mineral. The Earth's fiendish magnetic field would make a cultivator as weak as a mortal, and they would not be able to use their divine telekinesis to explore. The Myriad Nature sect clearly knew how to make use of the interns. The examination this time was to use 3 days to walk from one end of the mountain range to the other. At the same time, they had to collect as much primordial magnetic field as possible. After 3 days, they would arrive at the agreed location. As long as they handed over a piece of primordial magnetic field, they would pass the examination. After that, they would become a glorious servant or servant. However, the message conveyed by the direct disciple named Lu Tian was filled with malice. At that time, there were already more than 1,000 people gathered in the open space in front of the mountain. There were men and women, young and old, and their cultivations varied. Some of them had been waiting there for a whole month. Seeing that the examination was about to begin, no one from the Myriad Nature sect had arrived. Li Qingshan suddenly looked up. The sky was flashing with golden light, and it was rapidly enlarging. With a loud bang, sand and stones flew everywhere, and the earth shook. A 3-legged golden toad descended from the sky. Li Qingshan raised his hand to block the wind and sand. When he looked up, he saw a pair of slender phoenix eyes. Because they were overflowing with a smile, they were almost squinting into 2 lines. It was hard to see the expression of the eyes clearly, and he could not even be sure if the person was looking at him or not. However, Li Qingshan felt like he was being watched. "My friends, you have waited for a long time. I am the examiner for this examination, Lu Tian. Remember, not Lu as in music, but Lu as in happiness. If you can pass this examination, you can call me Brother Lu from now on." The man sat on the 3-legged golden toad. He had phoenix eyes, a hooked nose, and thin lips. There were 3 rings on each of his hands, all of them of different styles. There was also a golden necklace around his neck, and he was wearing an extremely tacky silk robe. He was dressed in jewels, but they did not match his attire at all. He looked like the foolish son of a rich landlord who wished he could wear everything he owned. However, Li Qingshan had a feeling that this Lu Tian was undoubtedly a Renhuang, and he was much more dangerous than any of the cultivators who had passed the 5th tribulation, be it Chuolong, Wan Yaozhu, or that Emperor Li of the Hungry Ghost Realm. But this is clearly the first time we met. Why is he staring at me? Did he give himself away? Or was it just my imagination? Croak! The 3-legged golden toad opened its mouth and let out a thunderous cry, almost shattering the eardrums of those who heard it. Lu Tian said with a smile, "Well, those who are participating in the assessment, throw in your bookmarks. If anyone is willing to feed this treasure of mine with gold, I will thank him." The cultivators stepped forward one after another and threw their bookmarks into the mouth of the golden toad. There were nearly 1,000 mysterious wooden bookmarks, hundreds of brass bookmarks, and more than 20 silver bookmarks. Only the cyan jade bookmarks were the least, with only a few bookmarks. Every bookmark holder attracted everyone's attention. However, Li Qingshan had a feeling of being monitored. Ever since he came to the human realm, it seemed that he had always encountered this feeling. It was really terrible. After entering the Myriad Manifestations sect, he must quickly find the path to the ultimate and, at the same time, improve his cultivation. There were obviously many rich people among the cultivators. Many people took out a large amount of gold from their sumeru rings and fed it to the golden toad. Yamcha smiled in greeting, making those people feel flattered. The people who came later would more or less take out a little gold, and those who didn't have it would borrow from the people around them. However, in Li Qingshan's view, this guy always had a smile on his face. He threw the cyan jade bookmark and wanted to turn around and leave. Lu Tian suddenly asked, "Hey kid, don't you have any gold?" Sorry, I don't have any. Although her voice was gentle, it was firm. The nine-colored deer raised its head proudly, ignoring the three-legged golden toad beside it. The other three direct disciples looked like they were watching a good show. Senior Brother Pai, who had a mysterious temperament, laughed. Senior Brother Lu, you're in trouble this time. Wan Yaozhu immediately pointed her spear at them. Senior Brother Run, Senior Brother Pai, Senior Brother Lung, you three are really too much. As direct disciples, how can you be so unrestrained? Not only did you not dissuade him, but you also made a bet with Senior Brother Lung. The three true disciples either kept their heads low and didn't speak, or looked up at the sky and laughed. They couldn't be more familiar with junior sister Ruan's temperament. In the entire Wan Xiang sect, which true disciple hadn't been taught a lesson by her. They were simply too embarrassed to call themselves true disciples. Even the two patriarchs had been taught many lessons by her. Chapter 1371. Lu Tianxiao sighed. Sigh, how would I know she would come? But it doesn't matter. Accidents are part of the gamble, and it's the most wonderful part. As long as we can pull her in, everything will be fine. Are you kidding me? Would junior sister Ruan bet with you? Hee, believe me, there are no people in this world who don't like gambling, and there are also people who never gamble. Get ready. The gambling is about to begin. Lu Tian coughed twice and said, This is my job. I hope junior sister can respect it. The entrance examination has always been a survival of the fittest. Don't worry, we won't go as far as to start a massacre. After all, the Myriad Appearance sect is a righteous sect. How could we not care about the consequences? I promise you, as long as they can walk out of the mountain, I will give each of them a piece of primary magnet. I guarantee that they will pass the entrance examination. All right, Ruan Yaozhu sighed. She could only do this much. According to the rules of the Wanxiang sect, every true disciple was responsible for a task, and no one else could interfere. Hopefully, the situation wouldn't get too bad. Pai Yangqiu blinked and said, Yo, junior brother Lu, are you so confident that you can beat us this time? Ren Aoyo said, Tell me, what do you want to bet this time? Lung Yuan was silent and seemed to be deep in thought. I'm sure you've already guessed it with your wisdom. It was very simple. It was to bet on the Zhuang Yuan, Bang Yan, and Tanhua this time. I don't know any of these people, and the information I received is the same as yours. I guarantee absolute fairness and honesty. The odds will depend on the bet. Pai Yangqiu thought for a while and said, According to your rules, the strongest person will be the Zhuang Yuan. However, this origin magnetic mountain has greatly reduced the gap between these people, adding countless variables to the equation. Ren Chiyu said, Humph, even if they're affected by the Yuan Ci mountain, a nascent soul cultivator is still a nascent soul cultivator. How can they be threatened by others? There's no need to consider these variables at all. In the end, the champion will definitely be one of these people. Lung Yuan said, I got it. That's right. If they all fail miserably, what's the point of cultivating? Lu Tian laughed. Let's place our bets. According to the old rules, junior sister Wan, are you really not going to play around? The four of them deliberated and chose their targets. Then, they placed down a large number of green jade lots. Each green jade lot represented a huge amount of resources. Compared to this, the bit of magnets they had to pay to ensure that all the cultivators who walked out of the origin magnetic mountain passed the trial was like a small reward. Such a huge gamble caused the heartbeat of Ruan Yaozhu, who was also a true disciple, to quicken. She could not understand why these men were doing this. When the mystery was revealed, out of the 5 candidates, 4 of them had made completely different choices. The 3 of them looked at the name that Lu Tian had chosen in unison and frowned, wondering if they had missed something. Wan Yaozhu exclaimed in surprise, "Li Qingshan." She asked doubtfully, "Why?" This was also what the other three wanted to ask. Lu Tian laughed and said, "Don't you know, a kid of unknown origin? Do I like to bet on dark horses the most?" Ren Chiyu said, "Don't put on airs. Hurry up and explain. What is it about this Li Qingshan that is worth your attention?" According to common sense, he was the one with the least chance of winning. Even the female cultivator, who didn't choose, had a higher chance of winning than him. The final winner of this game was bound to be the strongest, most ruthless, and most cunning person. In an instant, the entire Yuan-fused mountain was projected, including every cave, every person, and even down to every stone. Low, buzzing sounds could be heard from within, like the buzzing of mosquitoes. Listening carefully, one would be able to distinguish many human languages. With this map in hand, all the scenes and sounds of an area could be displayed. Pai Yangqiu was shocked. This is a replica of the heavenly vision, earthly hearing painting. Where did you get it? Of course I won it. It's just a replica, a replica. Lu Tian focused his gaze on one of the figures in the picture and said in an incomparably mushy voice, "Qingshan, oh Qingshan, my good horse, don't disappoint me." To be continued, XH 118. Chapter 1372. Li Qingshan frowned deeply. An inexplicable unhappiness piled up in his heart, like a ball of fire burning in the dark. The feeling of being watched by the divine tool of reading books made him feel as if he was just a bug in a glass cage, being watched and toyed with by someone high above. However, he had to endure it, because this was the farthest distance from the equality of all in the cultivation world. Mortals, whether rich or poor, were still human. They had their own fate of aging, sickness, and death. At most, they had a lifespan of 100 years. Cultivators, on the other hand, could rely on their own efforts to transcend aging, sickness, and death, and even fate. The difference between them was a whole realm, and they were like two different species. If there was a difference of two realms, be it in strength or lifespan, it would be the same as the difference between a human and a bug. "Senior, wait for me. Wait for me." Li Qingshan was deep in thought when a ball of fire jumped and caught up from behind. The fire couldn't illuminate the wide mine, and the jagged rocks were like monsters bearing their fangs and claws. Zhu Yingkai was like a frightened child, running with the torch and panting. "Do you want to draw over the earth, baleful beasts?" Li Qingshan turned around and glanced at him indifferently. Only then did Zhu Yingkai come to a screeching halt. He covered his mouth in fright. He felt like the current Li Qingshan was different from before. Only when the firelight reflected his figure on the rock wall behind him did he suddenly realize he was actually so large, even terrifying. He instinctively wanted to stay away, but when he thought of the terrifying earth evil beast, he wanted to get closer. Peace and uneasiness, two extreme feelings surged back and forth, and he couldn't speak for a moment. From him, Li Qingshan saw the embarrassment of all the weak, the dilemma, and the uneasiness. At some point, he was afraid that he was the same. This couldn't be completely overcome by so-called faith or willpower, but it required real strength. If he wanted to improve his cultivation as soon as possible, he had to get first place in this assessment, raise his status in the nature sect, and try to get as many resources as possible. This was the only way to obtain enough information. First, if he entered the ultimate, and second, related to the Hui Dragon. He had a feeling that this matter wasn't over yet. He said, "Seriously, from now on, you have to walk on your own." "Senior," Zhu Yingkai let out an almost sorrowful groan. "I saved your life. You helped me, and our grudges are settled. You don't owe me anything, and I don't owe you anything either. Follow me again. You will die." Li Qingshan said as he walked into the depths of the cave and disappeared into the darkness. Zhu Yingcai's expression changed. He was both fearful and reluctant to accept this, but in the end, he was afraid to ignore Li Qingshan's warning and follow them. "You are so strong. Why can't you take me with you? Why can't you let me pass the test easily and become a disciple of the Wanxiang sect? This is obviously a piece of cake for you." "Humph, I finally understand now. This is the path of cultivation. Cultivators are all cold and emotionless. In the future, Zhu Yingcai, won't be relying on anyone. I'll show you, Li Qingshan, what it means to not take advantage of a poor youth." He stood where he was, his face alternating between red and white. He was both angry and excited. Suddenly, a strange low roar came from the darkness. It seemed to be very far away, but it also seemed to be hiding in the darkness behind him. He suddenly thought of something and hurriedly ran into the depths of the cave. "I really need to get rid of this burden first. What do you think, junior sister Wan? In any case, this can't be called doing good deeds." Lu Tian laughed heartily, feeling extremely pleased. Even if they did, they would certainly be irreconcilable enemies, ready to fight. However, their conversation shocked Wan Yaozhu. The fair-faced young man said, "Brother, what should we do?" The black-faced fiend said, "Brother, is there a need to ask? Since the rules allow it, we naturally have to make good use of it. Are we really going to dig in this cave?" The fair-faced young man asked again, "What about the 3 nascent soul cultivators?" "Ha! If they know what's good for them, we don't have to make things difficult for them. In the future, we'll all be brothers of the same sect. Brothers of one heart. Our sharpness can cut through metal." 2 hands, one black and one white, tightly clasped together. Then they ran side by side towards the end of the mountain range, ready to do the cost-free business that Li Qingshan had thought of. To be continued. XH 118. They were very troublesome. The Wanxiang sect's entrance exam, which was held once every 10 years, never paid attention to any mysterious tests or strange questions. As for whether you were strong or weak, kind or evil, or what characteristics you had, they did not care. Cultivators were all so busy. They did not have the time to carefully distinguish the strengths and weaknesses of a group of ants, much less to waste resources to specially set up an exam. The purpose of the exam was very clear. It was to let these cultivators use their lives to exchange for the precious resources that the sect needed. Those who succeeded would be accepted into the sect and become a part of the entire system. Those who failed would be cannon fodder. In any case, other people's children will never die. As the chief examiner this time, Lu Tian merely used this foundation to turn this exam into an exciting gamble. He was prepared to make a lot of money from this. As for who lived and who died, who won and who lost, it did not matter at all. It was fine as long as the dark horse he had bet on was fine. But now that the situation had taken a turn for the worse, he could not sit still any longer. He shouted at the heavenly vision, earthly hearing painting, "Shut up!" He did not care whether Li Qingshan could hear him or not. He was like an ordinary gambler who had lost and was desperately blowing at a sieve. Li Qingshan naturally could not hear him. Even if he heard him, he would not obediently shut up. Of course, he knew that the earth evil beasts were the most dangerous part of this exam. They had no sense of sight, smell, taste, or touch. Only their hearing was extremely sensitive. Therefore, the most important thing to do in the Yuan-Ci mountain was to keep quiet. However, Li Qingshan did the exact opposite. He purposefully sang at the top of his lungs, as it would be far too foolish to keep yelling. He did it to draw over earth demon beasts, as earth demon beasts definitely possessed extremely pure origin magnets. However, he would have to put his life on the line. Ren Aoyo smiled and said, Junior Marshal Brother Lu, it seems that you, the dark horse, are going to die on the spot. You and Junior Marshal Sister, Juan, will not be able to continue the gamble. It can only be regarded as a draw. Lu Tian held his head with both hands and rubbed his hair into a pile of messy grass. I was wrong. I only saw that he was a desperado, but I didn't see that there was something wrong with his brain. I bet that he has never seen an Earth evil beast before. Once Li Qingshan was killed by an Earth evil beast, then no matter who won, he would definitely lose. No, he is not a bad person. Wan Yaozhu recalled Li Qingshan's last warning. If you follow me again, you will die. She finally understood. It's not that he doesn't understand the danger. If he doesn't want to rob others, but wants to get first place, this is the only way. Just now, it's not to get rid of a burden, but to put his life on the line so that the people around him can go to a safer place. This is because I have a kind heart. He would rather risk his life than hurt others. He would rather be misunderstood and resented by others than not save others. No matter what, I can't admit that such a person is a bad person. Pai Yangqiu clapped his hands and said, Junior Marshal Sister Wan, well said. This time, someone is really going to lose his underwear. It's a pity for this good person. TSK, TSK. As expected, good people don't live long. Hee, I have all of them. I don't lower my head all the way. Accompanied by Li Qingshan's loud and clear singing, Lu Tian shouted even louder, rolling on the back of the three-legged golden toad. Junior Marshal Sister, oh Junior Marshal Sister, you are so ruthless. Senior Marshal Brother only has this much. Wan Yaozhu hurriedly waved her hand. Senior Marshal Brother, I don't want to win, just consider it a draw. Chapter 1374. Fucking hell, the plot of reincarnation. Li Qingshan advanced triumphantly, one song after another. In the end, he was enjoying it. His voice was abnormally loud, causing the pebbles on the ground to tremble. His voice traveled along the cobweb-like cave, spreading throughout the entire Yuan-Ci mountain. One by one, the earth fiend beasts awoke from their slumber. He suddenly stopped in his tracks and pricked up his ears. He heard a strange sound in the darkness, like the hum of electricity. There was also the sound of rocks colliding with each other. It was rapidly approaching from the depths of the cave, getting closer and closer. Li Qingshan blinked his eyes, suspecting that he was seeing things. The monster that was running out from the depths of the cave. Its body was pitch black and rugged, like a crude stone beast statue, with a hint of postmodern style. It had extremely thick limbs and sharp claws. There were no eyes, ears, or nose on its head, but it had a huge mouth filled with sharp teeth. It was not surprising that an earth fiend beast would look like this, but this guy was only the size of a mastiff, not even reaching Li Qingshan's waist. Its movements did not seem particularly fast and powerful, but as it got closer, the magnetic field became more and more chaotic. The small world in his body was slightly affected. He rubbed his chin. Looks like this is an earth fiend beast. This kid really has never seen an earth fiend beast before. He really has never seen an earth fiend beast before. Lu Tian roared, slapping the back of the three-legged golden toad, producing the sound of metal clashing. The three-legged golden toad croaked, its eyeballs turning for a moment before closing again, ignoring its master's agitation. Pai Yangqiu smiled and said, such a small earth fiend beast is indeed rare. I'm afraid it was just born from the earth fiend magnetic mountain. If it was outside, it wouldn't be a threat to a nascent soul cultivator, but inside this divine magnetic mountain, no spells can be used. Li Qingshan's eyes narrowed. He released his aura, but the small earth fiend beast was not afraid, nor did it show any respect. Instead, it ran even faster, its cries becoming louder. When it was 100 feet away, it pushed off with its hind claws and pounced with all its might. Its heavy body glided across the distance of 100 feet easily, and its sharp teeth bit towards Li Qingshan's neck. With a bang, Li Qingshan casually lifted his right leg and stomped the little earthly evil beast's head hard into the ground. The little earth evil beast struggled with all its might. Its sharp claws scratched the ground, leaving behind white claw marks. But in the face of Li Qingshan's terrifying strength, it was naturally useless. Pai Yangqiu said, his physique is not bad. Since he dared to lure the earth evil beast over, he must have some skills. However, I think he's in trouble this time. Li Qingshan felt that as long as he exerted a little more strength, he would be able to crush its stone head. However, this was the first time he had seen such a strange species. Moreover, he still had to fight against more earth-fiend beasts. Therefore, he squatted down and prepared to study it. A huge and ferocious shadow appeared behind him. It was more than 10 times larger than the small earthly fiend beast, but it floated silently in the air. It seemed to be weightless. It slowly opened its mouth, and each of its teeth was like a stalactite. It bit down towards Li Qingshan's head. Yuan Yaozhu's face was filled with anxiety. Even if he was a nascent soul cultivator, once his physical body was destroyed, his nascent soul would not be able to exist in the divine magnetic mountain for long. Very soon, it would be crushed by the earth fiend magnetic mountain. She secretly made up her mind. Even if she had to offend her senior brothers, she would still rush into the divine magnetic mountain. It's over, my dark horse. Lu Tian held his head as if he had lost his parents. Ren Chuyu smiled and shook his head. Give up, junior sister. It's too late for you to go in now. This brat has already been dismembered by the earth fiend beasts. Don't be sad. He can only blame himself for being too bold and inexperienced. Earth fiend beasts are all made up of rocks, so they have no weak points at all unless you can find the Yuan fused magnet in their bodies. However, the Yuan fused magnet could be in any part of the earth fiend beast's body, and it's said that it's constantly moving. If you want to kill an earth fiend beast, you have to destroy more than half of its body. Junior brother Lu, prepare to pay up. Wait, look. Pai Yangqiu pointed at the heavenly vision, earthly hearing painting. He's still alive. The pile of rocks exploded, and Li Qingshan stood up again. His clothes were tattered, but there were only a few shallow claw marks on his chest. The little earth fiend beast on his calf bit desperately, but it couldn't even leave a mark. Ha, that's more like it. If they were all as small as you, how many Yuan fused magnets would there be? I'd have sung for so long in vain. Pai Yangqiu's expression kept changing. At this realm, to have such a physique, I'm afraid only eldest senior brother, who cultivates the true dragon scripture, and eldest senior sister, who cultivates the black tortoise scripture, can compare. As long as he doesn't seek his own death, there's nothing in the Yuan fused mountain that can threaten him. Ren Chuyu said, this brat either cultivates some special technique or has some inhuman bloodline. He's really well hidden. I can't even tell from his appearance. Lu Tian, how did you figure it out? His comment almost revealed the secrets of the heavens. Li Qingshan had cultivated the 9 transformations of demons and gods, and had various inhuman bloodlines, which was why he had such a strong physique. Lu Tian laughed heartily. I can only tell that he's a ruthless person. I can't tell his technique or bloodline, but such a strong and fierce temperament can't be cultivated in a cave abode. As expected of the dark horse, I've chosen. Well done. At this moment, Li Qingshan swept his leg horizontally and kicked the earth fiend beast that was pouncing at him away. The little earth fiend beast was also smashed into pieces. With a loud boom, the earth fiend beast's head was smashed again. It crashed heavily into the rock wall, and cracks spread all over its body. The rocks on the ceiling shattered, and fell down. Among the flying rocks, Li Qingshan casually caught a walnut-sized small stone that was as black as iron, but it also shone faintly. It was the yuan-fused magnets in the little earth-fiend beast's body. The first small piece, and the second big piece. Li Qingshan was in a good mood. He smiled faintly, looking more and more like a bright young man. The earth-fiend beast didn't know fear or pain. It pounced at him again. Its terrifying figure and invisible magnetic field were the nemesis of cultivators. But this time, no one doubted the outcome of the battle. To be continued. If I kill a few more unlucky fellows and take their elemental magnets for myself, that would be even more perfect. Li Qingshan quickened his pace and sprinted through the winding mine. He did not hesitate to choose every fork. He encountered another 2 earth emanations beasts along the way, but he dealt with them in no time. There were 2 more elemental magnets in his basket. The biggest one was almost the size of a peach. He's going down continuously. Pai Yangqiu and the others could clearly see from the heavenly vision and earthly hearing that Li Qingshan was going down almost every fork. He had chosen to go down, which greatly violated the basic principle of exploring the elemental magnet mountain. The deeper one went into the elemental magnet mountain. The stronger the earth emanations magnets, the more earth emanations beasts there would be, and the more dangerous it would be. Hence, if one chose a path, they would try to go up as much as possible. They would eventually travel along the mountain ridge, where they would not encounter any earth emanations beasts. If they really could not find any elemental magnets, they would take the risk to go down. Most of the cultivators who participated in the trial were advancing along this path. Countless battles had already occurred. If this were any other time, this would be the highlight of this gamble. Perhaps they would even make a few small bets as an afterthought. However, right now, no one cared whether they lived or died. The true disciples' gazes were all focused on the lone figure running down. Ren Yu frowned and said, "What is he trying to do?" Lung Yuan said coldly, "He's courting death." Lu Tian began to ravage her hair again. "Idiot, you already have an absolute chance of winning. Why are you still going down? Go back up." After sprinting for a while, Li Qingshan suddenly stopped and smiled. He was standing on a cliff, and in front of him was an empty space. An underground cave that was 1,000 feet tall and as big as 10 soccer fields appeared before him. It was almost impossible for such a large cave to appear in an ordinary mountain range. This was already the deepest part of the elemental magnet mountain. If he continued forward, he would be out of the mountain, and if he continued down, he would be deep underground. He leapt off the cliff. Specks of light flickered in the darkness. There were specks of light everywhere above his head and below his feet. They were like a resplendent starry sky, making him forget where he was, as if he was in a boundless void. These were the specks of light from the elemental magnets. They were half buried in the walls, and some were even exposed. It was possible to imagine how many ores there would be under the walls. However, under this dreamlike scenery, there was a great danger. When Li Qingshan entered the depths of the cave, the stars silently faded into the darkness, no longer shining. Even though he did not make a single sound, he had alarmed this silent land, as well as the huge beasts slumbering in the darkness. Even though the spirit turtle's premonition was almost completely ineffective, the chilling sensation was like needles stabbing into his skin, causing goosebumps to appear all over his body, secretly evoking the most primitive fear. The true disciples all stopped talking and stared fixedly at the heaven vision earth listen. They could see clearly that the craggy walls began to move, swallowing up the elemental magnets half buried in the walls. Sinister heads poked out one after another, looking in Li Qingshan's direction. This was not some elemental magnets, but the nest of the earth-fiend beasts. Li Qingshan arrived at the center of the nest. There was a strange rock that was 100 feet tall. He leapt onto the strange rock. Due to the angle, he did not see the elemental magnets that were almost the size of a watermelon embedded on the other side of the strange rock. They shone with an unusually bright light as they slowly sank into the depths of the strange rock. To be continued. Chapter 1376. Li Qingshan coughed at his fists. His coughs sounded like 2 claps of thunder in the silent cave. Ads. This site has changed to a new website, shorthand method. Strawberry, rumble, rumble, rumble. There was a commotion in the darkness, and the sound of rocks colliding rang out incessantly, surging towards him like a tsunami. Standing on the high stage, Li Qingshan took a deep breath, opened his arms, and said loudly, "Dear friends, how are you? How are you? How are you? How are you?" His voice reverberated wildly in the cave, and what responded to him was a strange buzzing sound that swallowed his voice in an instant. It was as if a surging sea had surrounded him on this isolated island. Pai Yangqiu said with certainty, "He's crazy." Ren Aoyou laughed and said, "No wonder junior brother Lu likes to bet on dark horses. This bet is really interesting. Even if you lose, it's worth it." Up until now, he'd already firmly won the first round. And once the Earth Evil Beast killed this fellow, victory in the second round would be within his reach. Lu Tian smiled bitterly. But it seems a little too exciting. Ruan Yaozhu's face was full of concern. Now, I, Li Qingshan, would like to present a song to everyone. A man should strengthen himself. Li Qingshan bowed slightly, opened his right arm, and bowed. The smile on his face was wild and arrogant. The boulder under his feet was shaking. No, the entire cave was shaking. Li Qingshan furrowed his brows, puffed out his chest, and sang loudly, "Arrogant and haughty, I laugh at the waves." Roar! The group of beasts roared and pounced at him from all directions. The strange stone under his feet cracked open into a ferocious mouth that could swallow an elephant. My blood is as hot as the red sun. Li Qingshan leaped into the air and headed straight for the dome. The beasts collided with one another beneath his feet, and the deafening sound was like a landslide. There were sinister rocks and overlapping magnetic fields everywhere. It was as if he had fallen into the abyss of hell. Boom! A huge, hideous head broke through the dozens of Earth Evil Beasts that were blocking its way, completely breaking free from the pull of gravity and biting towards Li Qingshan at an unbelievable speed. Li Qingshan flew into the air and slowed down. In this place, he could not use any of his magic power or demonic aura. Unless he disregarded the monitoring gazes and spread his phoenix wings, he would only end up in the mouth of this whale-like earth-fiend beast. Guts as if made of iron. Li Qingshan turned around and stepped on the huge beast's teeth. In the moment the huge mouth closed, Li Qingshan's eyes widened. Once again, he leaped high into the air and reached the ceiling of the cavern. Then, he threw a punch at the black ironstone pillar that was over 100 feet in weight. Bone like diamond. The fist collided with the iron stone, producing the sound of metal clashing. With a bang, the stone pillar broke off from the dome and fell. It smashed towards the pursuing giant beast. Boom! The giant beast was smashed to the ground. Smoke and dust flew everywhere, and the cave shook violently. Li Qingshan made use of the counterforce to push himself to another hanging stone pillar. Just when he was about to repeat the same trick, a strong wind came from above his head. An Earth Evil Beast woke up from the rock wall of the dome and pounced on him, who was unable to dodge in midair. His singing was interrupted, and the man and the beast fell to the ground rapidly. Ferocious fangs filled his vision. He glanced at the ground from the corner of his eyes. Hundreds of earth evil beasts of all sizes were waiting with their heads held high. Even if there were no such dangers, falling from a height of 100 feet, even a body of steel would break. No matter how strong his physique was, he was not invincible. Moreover, he was in a place like this, in a world like this. An intense fall would cause him to lose his ability to fight back for a short period of time. It would be hard for him to escape the fate of being torn apart by the beasts. Pai Yangqiu said with certainty, "He's finished." Perhaps, from the moment he entered the cave and challenged the beasts, he was destined to end up like this. This was the fate of those who overestimated themselves. No, he's still smiling. He's still smiling. Lu Tianma used the vision of heaven and hearing of earth and zoomed in on Li Qingshan's face. As expected, at the critical moment of life and death, he fell rapidly. The smile on his face became wilder and wilder, wilder and wilder like the wind. With an even louder voice, he continued to sing, "Breadth of mind, vision of 10,000 miles." He opened his arms and gave the earth evil beast a big hug. He twisted his body in midair and took the upper position. Boom! Rocks flew everywhere. The ground cracked, and the earth evil beast was smashed into pieces. With his black hair fluttering in the wind, Li Qingshan grabbed the third piece of primary magnet and threw it into the basket behind him. He laughed and sang, "I vow to work hard and be a good man." Roar! With a loud roar, he pounced on an earth evil beast. He stabbed the tiger demon steel's heart into its chest and took out another primary magnet. The earth evil beast immediately froze on the spot like a stone statue. To be a good man, I must work hard every day. The buzzing sound drowned out his singing. Dozens of earth evil beasts covered his body. In the next moment, an even louder singing voice rang out. A hot-blooded man, hotter than the sun. He stepped on the ground with his bare feet. His majestic figure seemed to have transformed into a ferocious beast made of steel. His hands opened up like sharp claws. Roar! Huh! Hey! With a loud roar and a tiger demon steel's heart, an earth evil beast froze. It was like a ferocious tiger fighting a pack of wolves. The pack of wolves was fierce, but the tiger's claws were even more deadly. The corpses of the wolves littered the ground, unable to approach. The true disciples were all dumbfounded. Pai Yangqiu said in disbelief, "How did he do it?" The most troublesome thing about the earth evil beasts was that they had no vital points. Sometimes they would have to continue fighting even after half of their bodies were destroyed. It was fine if they fought alone, but once they surrounded them and couldn't escape, it would be like falling into a stone mill. They would be crushed into pieces very quickly. However, Li Qingshan used the common black tiger steel's heart to subdue his enemies and forcefully carve out a path of survival. The only explanation was that he could instantly determine the position of the primary magnet in the earth evil beast's body. However, even the human emperors present couldn't do this. Lu Tian shook his head slowly. "I don't know. This dark horse is so dark that I don't even know how to explain it." It was his only remaining innate ability, earth strength. In this deep cave, not only was he not affected by the earth evil magnets, he became even stronger and more sensitive. He relied on this ability to sense the location of the origin magnets in each earth evil beast's body. That was how he was able to kill them in one strike. A deep tranquility surrounded him, as if he was in his mother's embrace. He didn't feel any fear. He was the son of the earth. Once again, he leaped up and charged through the beast's tide. "I'm going to create a new world for my dream." Stepping over the bodies of the earth evil beasts, he pounced toward the ferocious mouth of the Beast King, diving into the boiling pool of lightning. Boom! Lightning exploded, and the picture of heavenly vision, earthly hearing, was also covered in a vast expanse of white. The true disciples all widen their eyes. When the white light gradually faded, they saw the terrifying Beast King still in the posture of spitting lightning, standing motionlessly in the same place. However, there was no sign of Li Qingshan. Wan Yaozhu asked in a trembling voice, Is he still alive? Lu Tian said, Look. A charred human figure walked out of the Beast King's mouth, holding a huge origin magnet in his hand. It was shining brightly in the darkness. Li Qingshan laughed, revealing his snow-white fangs as he looked down at the horde of beasts. Since you're a man, you should strengthen yourself. XH 118. Chapter 1377. Lu Tian cheered and raised his fists. Qingshan! 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 He bumped into the three-legged golden toad and shouted, Invincible Dark Horse! Invincible Dark Horse! Croak! The three-legged golden toad rolled its eyes and closed them again. Greater than over equal to 4 all, greater than over equal to 4 all. Wan Yaozhu pressed her chest. This is great. She was excited and could not calm down for a long time, thinking that this was probably the feeling of gambling that senior martial brother Lu mentioned. Lu Tian pointed at Pai Yangqiu and the other two and smiled. You three, what do you think? It was the smile of the winner of the gamble. Is he really not an Azura? Pai Yangqiu was confused. He had been through quite a few battles in the past, and he had seen many existences even more powerful than Li Qingshan. However, he had only seen Azura warriors with such fervent passion for battle and the lofty sentiments where they could cast their lives aside. After all, cultivators pursued longevity. They had to avoid pointless battles and put an end to fights that they had no confidence in winning. They already had a very, very high status and a very, very long lifespan to enjoy. They would never easily gamble everything they had, even if the risk was very, very low. The gamble with Lu Tian was just a way for direct disciples to socialize and pursue excitement. No matter how bad the loss was, it was just a few green jade lots. There were always winners and losers in gambling. As long as one spent some time, they would be able to earn it back. However, Li Qingshan was not like that. He had ventured deep into the lair in the center of the mountain when he basically knew nothing about the earth malevolent beasts. He had advanced triumphantly, risking the danger of being killed and fighting the beasts without the slightest sense of caution. His way of doing things did not resemble a cultivator at all. Such a fellow was simply unreasonable and could even be said to be extremely stupid. Did he not know that the slightest accident would ruin everything? The effort, the bright future, and his own life were all placed on the gambling table, waiting for fate to decide. Pai Yangqiu did not know that Li Qingshan had been through many dangers and life and death situations. The current situation was nothing out of the ordinary. If it wasn't for his courage and determination to disregard life and death, he would have already become a pile of bones. How could he have reached this step? He did not have a bright future to enjoy because the road ahead was even more dangerous. Soon, he would enter the depths of the demon domain, facing demon god Qiongqi. Compared to that, what were a few earth evil beasts? If he had to avoid even this little bit of risk, then he might as well just slit his own throat and die. He had never thought of stopping, never thought of turning back, so he was willing to bet everything on it. He wanted to see if he had the luck to walk above the 9 heavens. If he really died on the way, then he should just accept his fate. At the very least, it wasn't because of cowardice and incompetence. Humph, Azuras don't know how to put on an act. Ren Aoyo still couldn't get over the fact that Li Qingshan behaved like an obedient child at the beginning. A hint of admiration flashed in his eyes. His gaze was no longer that of someone looking down at an insect trapped in a glass container from high above. Instead, he was treating him as a fellow Taoist who was worthy of being treated as an equal. She even began to admit in her heart that it was her eyesight that failed to see through his true appearance. At this time, Li Qingshan jumped down from the frozen giant beast's mouth and fought with the other beasts, ignoring the pain. Kuang-ge laughed arrogantly. The Earth Divine Power provided him with an endless supply of energy, and as he gained a deeper understanding of the Earth Fiend beast's attack patterns, he was also becoming more and more skillful. The terrifying murderers were like a bunch of chickens and dogs in front of him. In the midst of his wild singing, it was as if a black whirlwind swept through the cave, crushing and crushing everything. Pai Yongqiu sighed. Why doesn't he go to the Azura path? Maybe he can become a child of destiny. He will immediately be valued by the generals of the Azura path. He will definitely have a better future than in the mortal path. Lung Yuan frowned thoughtfully, looking more and more unfathomable. Lu Tian laughed. Maybe he is attracted by junior sister Ruan's charm. Anyway, I will definitely win this round. If he is not the top scorer, I will swallow this heaven-seeing, earth-hearing painting. Ha ha ha. Wan Yaozhu blushed. Senior brother, don't talk nonsense. What charm do I have? Anyway, no matter how much you win, you will have to return it to the 3 senior brothers. Nine-colored deer sighed. She knew it would be like this. She had never thought of winning the green jade lots from her senior brothers. Junior sister, don't you know what greed is? I hate people like you the most in gambling. Lu Tian smiled slyly. But I don't think I will lose. Besides, this is a bet between me and you. Don't tell me the 3 of them have the nerve to ask for compensation from you. Junior sister Wan, are you looking down on me? Or do you want me to be looked down upon by Lu Tian? Ren Aoyo said unhappily, and little Lu, don't speak too early. There is still a long way to go before the end of the bet. Wan Yaozhu pouted and lowered her head in silence. She seemed a little dull, but she was not someone who would be easily swayed by words. That's right. This Li Qingshan obviously did not prepare for this assessment. He knows very little about the Earth Evil Beast. He is completely relying on his strong physique to fight it. But after fighting the Earth Evil Beast, how much strength does he have left? But the 2 brothers are different. They are clearly prepared and do not care about the other nascent soul cultivators. They must have something to rely on. Moreover, they are waiting for the exhausted. Senior brother Lu, the outcome is still unknown. Pai Yongqiu spoke, frankly with assurance. How could they admit defeat before the results were out? But after witnessing Li Qingshan's ferocity, they did not have much hope. The 2 brothers had better not lose their minds. They could be considered lucky to have provoked a monster like Li Qingshan. Fine. I will let you 3 give up. Let's see what those 2 brats are doing. Lu Tian smiled as he turned the picture of heaven's vision. Earth's hearing to the other side of the primal magnet mountain, locking onto the pair of brothers. He saw that they were busy guarding the only path out of the mountain, actively preparing something. It seemed like they were setting up a formation. However, in this essence-fused mountain, no matter if it was transcendence energy, art's treasures, or formations, as long as it had the word transcendence in it, they would not be able to use it. Even though they were almost out of the mountain from where they were, and the influence of the Earth's fiendish magnetism was beginning to weaken, ordinary formations would not be of much use. But when they saw the tools they were using to set up the formation, the eyes of the few true disciples lit up. Lu Tian was surprised and said, it's actually this formation. Ha! These 2 brats are indeed prepared. Not only was he not worried, he even smiled and said, not bad. There is a chance, a great chance. Ren Aoyo and Pai Yongqiu looked at each other, and their expressions relaxed a lot. At least it proved that their eyesight was not too bad. The bet had only just begun. Wang Yaozhu frowned. She did not expect the two brothers to be prepared to this extent. They were obviously planning to rob them from the beginning. Such sinister intentions made her very unhappy, but she could not help but worry about Li Qingshan's safety. They might not dare to attack a nascent soul cultivator. It's better to be a male cultivator. It's not a big deal to fight and do bad things. Maybe they will appreciate me more. Alas, being a woman is so troublesome. While she was struggling, heavy footsteps came from the depths of the cave. Bang, bang, bang. The footsteps were getting closer and closer. All the cultivators immediately fell silent. Such footsteps could only be made by the earth fiend beast. There was no way to escape here. If he went forward, he would only run into the two brothers' trap. This time, there were wolves in front of him and tigers behind him. He was in a dilemma. Zhu Yingkai sat up and asked anxiously, Senior, what should we do? Su Tong's eyes were shining. She suddenly opened her eyes wide as if she had seen something incredible. How is this possible? Chapter 1379. Li Qingshan lowered his head and bent his waist deeply. His well-defined muscles flowed like water, and the iron basket on his back was many times larger than the basket issued by the nature sect, making him look like a big snail crawling slowly. However, this was just an illusion. Every step he took was more than 3 meters, and his bare feet deeply stepped into the ground before quickly pulling up, leaving a series of deep footprints. The brilliance of the prime magnet shone through the gaps of the iron basket, as eye-catching as fireflies in the dark. How could he collect so many prime magnets of such high quality? Su Tong felt that she had cheated in this assessment, and she could not be compared to the two shameless brothers. She really could not imagine how he did it. Suddenly, she thought of the song and the roar coming from the belly of the mountain, and a thought came to her mind. No way did he collect so many prime magnets by killing earth beasts. With a smile on her face, she walked forward and bowed. Fellow Taoist, please wait. Under the awe of the crowd, Li Qingshan slowed down, but did not stop. What can I do for you, Taoist? Su Tong said solemnly, Taoist, please be careful. There are evil people blocking the way. Do you remember the two nascent soul cultivators? One was a pretty boy, and the other was a short, black man. They were brothers, and they set up the Earth Fiend magnetic formation to rob cultivators who passed by. Many people have been killed. Li Qingshan was surprised. Earth Fiend magnetic formation. There is such a formation? Alas, the effect of this formation is the same as the Earth Fiend magnetic formation, and it can greatly weaken the enemies who enter the formation. The two brothers are really ingenious, using this formation to resist the influence of the Earth Fiend magnetic formation. As long as you are within the range of the formation, you can almost completely recover your strength. I'm afraid no one in this mountain is a match for them. Su Tong looked worried. She wanted to persuade Li Qingshan to ally with her. If her guess was right, then his strength was extremely powerful, and a powerful ally was much more useful than a group of useless people. Zhu Yingcai's mood was somewhat complicated, but he still stepped forward to complain. These two fellows are really too despicable. They stole the source magnet that everyone worked so hard to dig up. They're exactly the same as those mountain bandits. You must help us. Li Qingshan glanced at him indifferently. Since the rules allow it, then I'll do it. There was nothing wrong with that. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. He quickened his pace and moved forward, deciding to follow the Qilins way and not meddle in other people's business. Hey, fellow cultivator. Su Tong stomped her foot. He hurried to catch up. Outside the Yuan-Ci Mountain one, Yao Zhu frowned slightly. This was different from how Li Qingshan behaved in White's Tag. Was the human heart really that complicated? The nine-colored deer was even more anxious. Bastard Li Qingshan, where is your sense of justice when you invited those beggars to eat? Where's your courage to not fear the myriad appearance sect? Lu Tian smiled and said, "What do you think, Junior Sister Wan? He's not as kind as you think, right? The human heart is unpredictable. The outcome of this gamble of good and evil is hard to predict. If he doesn't do evil or good, then it'll be a draw." "I trust him," Wan Yaozhu said. Lu Tian licked his thin lips and said, "I really can't wait to see the final outcome." Ren Aoyou and Pai Yangqiu clenched their fists. "I'm begging you, leave one for me and let me pass." The middle-aged man cried. He knelt on the ground and begged the two brothers. He came here from another cave and ran into the trap. All the source magnets on him were swept away. The pale-faced man smiled and said, "Brother, what do you think? Why don't we give him a piece?" "I feel bad seeing him cry," the dark-faced man said fiercely. "Brother, since when did your heart become so soft?" "Sigh, I'm a compassionate person." "That's strange." They were like cats that had caught a mouse, playing around with a relaxed expression on their faces. It was just to relieve their boredom. When the heavy footsteps rang out, they all widened their eyes, gazing at Li Qingshan in disbelief as he walked over from afar. The pale-faced man murmured, "It's a lie." The dark-faced man immediately became vigilant, and a dangerous cold light flashed in his eyes. Li Qingshan didn't even look at them. He didn't even change the frequency of his footsteps. He walked over step by step and stepped into the Earth Fiend source magnet array, continuing to move forward. He lowered his head as if he didn't see anything, but he thought, if they take the initiative to find trouble with me, of course I have to protect myself. That doesn't violate the Qilin Dao. The two brothers quickly exchanged glances. They had no intention of becoming enemies with any nascent soul cultivators, but the number of primordial magnets in the iron basket had already firmly secured the first place. Even if they gathered all the primordial magnets they had plundered, they still wouldn't be able to compare to it. Their plan was completely ruined. However, they didn't dare to act rashly. How could a person who could get so many source magnets be easy to deal with? Just by carrying such heavy source magnets and having a strong body that could still move forward steadily, he was not easy to deal with. Most importantly, this man seemed to have an invisible momentum that made them not dare to be enemies with him easily. Should they act or not? In an instant, Li Qingshan had already arrived in front of them, and a fierce battle was about to break out. The middle-aged man forgot to continue begging for a moment and looked up at Li Qingshan blankly. The cultivators behind him, led by Su Tong, were also extremely nervous. Even the few true disciples were staring at the heavenly vision, earthly hearing painting. In an instant, all eyes were focused on Li Qingshan, the result of the assessment, and the winner of the bet would be revealed at this moment. However, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Li Qingshan passed by the two brothers and continued to move forward, gradually getting farther and farther away. Su Tong curled her lips, and there was a sigh behind her. All the cultivators who wanted to take advantage of the chaos to sneak past were disappointed. The true disciples also had different expressions on their faces. Lu Tian showed a proud smile. He had at least won one of the two bets, and it was still a big profit for him. Wan Yaozhu sighed in her heart, but it had nothing to do with the outcome of the bet. Alas, this is the wisest choice. Forget it. How can I ask others to do the same as me? As long as they don't use violence indiscriminately, it is already commendable, but it was difficult to hide the disappointment in her beautiful eyes. Ren Aoyo and Pai Yongqiu couldn't help but shout at the heaven-seeing and earth-hearing painting. "You two useless things attack me!" The expressions of the two brothers were constantly changing. They seemed to be communicating with their divine thoughts, but they were caught in an argument and let the footsteps gradually fade away. Li Qingshan looked up and saw a flash of light in front of him. The exit was already in sight. He was definitely the champion of this assessment, but he was a little annoyed, as if there was a thorn in his back and a fishbone stuck in his throat. The middle-aged man's pleading voice rang out again. He suddenly stopped, and the iron basket behind him fell to the ground with a loud bang, stirring up a cloud of dust. Against the light, he straightened his body, turned around, and pointed at the two brothers. "Hey, you! Give him back the yuan magnet." "I'm afraid he's already dead." The fire illuminated the heavenly vision and earthly hearing painting red. The scene in the mountain couldn't be seen clearly. Wan Yaozhu's heart skipped a beat. Is it true that good people don't get what they deserve? Rin Aoyo and Pai Yongqiu were relieved. Once Li Qingshan was dead, Lu Tian would definitely lose. There was a trace of regret and doubt in their hearts. How could such a man die in such a place? However, they saw Lu Tian standing on the side with a smile. "Hey, Lu Tian, your dark horse is going to be eliminated," Lu Tian said. "You don't have to look like that. I bet that he won't die here." Wan Yaozhu was surprised. "Why?" "Because some people can win every bet, such as me. Do you think it's all luck?" "It's about time, brother." The fair-faced man fanned the fan with all his might. "Burn again." The black-faced man used all his strength to drive the dragon head crutch. For some reason, he felt uneasy. "I'm afraid he's already been burnt to ashes." Ah, the fair-faced man had just revealed a smile when he suddenly turned pale with fright. With a roar, Li Qingshan jumped out of the flames. His whole body was roasted red, but he was not injured at all. His strong and beautiful body looked like it was made of red copper, or like a blazing red tiger. He pounced on the fair-faced man and knocked him to the ground. Whirlwind protection. The fair-faced man had just shouted these 4 words when he was punched in the face. If it wasn't for the whirlwind, his brain would have burst. Even so, he was already scared out of his wits. Li Qingshan was about to give a second punch when a whistling sound came from the back of his head. Without looking back, he grabbed the dragon head crutch and pulled it hard. "Come here." The black-faced man could not help but stagger forward. His throat was tightly clutched, and his dark face was full of horror. The fair-faced man hurriedly urged his magic power, but before he could cast a spell, he was kicked in the stomach. His stomach turned upside down, and his internal organs felt like they were being torn apart. He almost vomited bile. The black-faced man wanted to use the dragon head crutch to fight back, but he was hit on the head by the crutch. He felt dizzy and saw stars. Li Qingshan punched and kicked left and right, as if he was hitting a sandbag. Whoever dared to resist, he would beat them up. Of all things to learn, you have to learn how to rob. Huh, who's crazy? Who broke into hell without the door? The two brothers screamed again and again, as if they were mortals without any power to resist. "Fellow cultivator, please spare me. Fellow cultivator, please spare me." The fair-faced man screamed. Of course, at this time, his face was already swollen, and there was a big footprint on it. Li Qingshan was also ruthless, specifically hitting the fair-faced man's face. The black-faced man was a little tougher and asked in surprise, Why are you fine?" "You still dare to ask?" Li Qingshan hit the crutch again. They were almost out of the mountain, and the influence of the earth fiend magnetism field on the small world inside his body was not that strong. An ordinary nascent soul cultivator would die, without a doubt, if they were hit like that in this kind of environment. However, he had the bloodline of gods and devils. The tiger demon was in charge of wind, and the phoenix was in charge of fire, so his resistance was extremely strong. Once he got close, these two brothers were not even as good as this earth fiend beast. At least the earth fiend beast did not know pain, and it had no vital points, so it would not be scared out of its wits. It was not that they were timid, but if their physical bodies were destroyed in this essence-fused mountain, and even their nascent souls could not escape, it would be a dead end. Therefore, in the end, Li Qingshan no longer needed to specially suppress them. After they realized that Li Qingshan had no killing intent, they simply lay on the ground and took the beating, afraid that if they put up any more resistance, it would instead arouse the killing intent in Li Qingshan's heart. Although Li Qingshan did not want to kill, he was a vengeful person. How could he let them off so easily? He grabbed one with his left hand and the other with his right, like a naughty child throwing his temper, and grabbing two rag dolls, throwing and beating them randomly. As he beat them, he asked, "I'm using virtue to win people over. Let me ask you, are you convinced? I beg you, stop beating us. We're convinced. We're convinced. All right." The onlookers were all dumbfounded. The two arrogant brothers were being beaten up in the earth fiend magnetism field formation that they had set up themselves. Other than screaming, they were begging for mercy. If it were not for the roasted red rocks still showing the power of the fire tornado, just now, they would have suspected that the two brothers were pretending to be nascent soul cultivators. Su Tong blinked her eyes. In that case, he really went deep into the mountain and killed the earth fiend beasts to get the multi-element magnetism field. They were both at the third level of the heavenly tribulation. So how could there be such a big difference between them? Lu Tian clapped his hands and said, "What did I say? What did I say?" Pai Yangqiu said, "Where the hell did this kid come from? Even the eldest senior brother couldn't have come out unscathed with that kind of cultivation and under that kind of circumstances." Ren Chaoyu frowned and suddenly shook his head with a smile. "I lost this round, but at least I helped junior sister Wan win this round." Wan Yaozhu said, "No, I didn't." Ren Chaoyu waved his hand. "No need to say more. I said you won, so you won." Pai Yangqiu said with a smile, "Junior sister Wan, just admit it. It's better for you to win than for Lu Tian to win. Let's see how he can boast in the future. When it comes to understanding people's minds, you're still better." You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.